Is game 5 here that's late, about 2 hours late to starting this stream. Well, sorry about that, those that wanted me to be here on time. I do respect you guys and think that I should, generally speaking, be on time. Okay, well, the issue was sleep, or the lack thereof it, and wishing to have more of it. Okay, these guys are pushing, they're counter-attacking. Let's see what we have here. Oh, well, let's make an episode. Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here. And of course, we're playing Black Ice for Hearts of Iron 4. And the reason I say it is because it is a major conversion of the basic. And hello, Kronos. Good to have you here. And we are pushing in. Now, I'm not going to go over all of my, and some of them are significant complaints about the mod, and just basically you could say that, you know, no one's ever going to 100% agree on anything, obviously. But the bottom line is I am generally satisfied with their direction. Whether the things that I think should be modified, whether they'll do them, or whether it's worth doing a mod for it, or is it maybe just something we put up with and live with things that I don't like. But generally speaking, this playthrough has gotten me to the point of wanting to play Black Ice again, wanting to play it, not just we're just taking a quick look at the world situation here. I guess you guys can interpret what you're seeing. You know, I mean, like this is like I said, I'm not going to do a big deal about it, but well, can we come down to here? Yes, okay, good. This is a minor thing. And Admiral Teague, hail. Hail, hail. Seems to be in... Yeah, we do have some possibilities here, but... Well, we can talk about that here. But a minor thing is should we have Comp Group A Nord here that showed up here? Well, historically, this is and we can look at the template. This is what becomes a mountain division, though it's, like we can see here, it is not particularly mountain troops here. And it definitely had some non-Germans in it. Now there is Nordland and some other SS units. A bunch of those people were Norwegians and Danes that have been, you know, occupied by Germany, but also there were volunteers, particularly from Sweden, that hadn't been occupied. So if we're looking at a, this playthrough, not every play, and this is, again, to those that are new around here, I want a plausibly realistic playthrough, not a forced must do exactly World War II and just see if Germany could get better die rolls this time and win. Meaning, there is a good reasons, and you can look at it, to not invade Norway and Denmark. When they start the invasion of Norway and Denmark, and definitely the planning stages, they hadn't started the invasion of France. So they're looking at, and you gotta try to, as much as you can when you examine history, is try to look at it from, out other people's windows, not just out your window. Well, Germany was limited from world trade by the British fleet, which through most of World War I sat up here. Uh, and you can go, okay, they could trade into the Russians were their enemies, but Germany did, like in World War II, did dominate the Baltic. So yeah, they could, and Russia, Finland was part of Russia at the time, so they could trade up to Sweden or something. But that was about it. So there was no overseas trade for Germany. They did make at least one submarine made the journey, and I think they started to make, or U-boat, if I want to call it that. I think they did start to make a few more, but I think they completed them as military submarines. They took one submarine, removed all weapons from it, Germany, during World War I, and it made it from Germany to, I believe it was New York, but maybe it was Boston. I'm not sure, but I believe it was New York. And it was unarmed, and it was designated as a merchant vessel. And that's basically what it, and it was, for the one journey, it was very much propaganda, and the sailors got off. They went around, because the U.S. was neutral at the time, went around New York City and whatnot as neutral civilian sailors. And the concept was for the thought, not for large industrial, either resources or, produced goods that the Allies were just, getting it in huge amounts. It was to try to bring in certain critical resources that even a small trickle would be very useful, but just things sort of went even a little more bad. So they completed the few submarines that they were sort of big submarines for the time. And it was a journey. And I remember reading an article about it, because they published this stuff of how they were avoiding British ships and whatnot, and getting across the Atlantic and then getting back. So that is the big, long picture, is they're worried about a long war with France down here and Britain keeping them from trade. Short term was Britain violating Norwegian neutrality, and Germany was, or whether it was German, civilian vessels. And the concept is, with a civilian vessel in other, in national waters, not in international waters, but in national waters, moving along within the 12-mile limit, it shouldn't be touched. If Norway is neutral, both a British and a German civilian vessel should be able to move through Norwegian water. Now, not military vessels, because that would then require the permission of Norway. And if Norway is giving permission, that would then make them no longer neutral. Now, you still, even with that, could move in and out of neutral ports, but there was, I don't remember all the details, but like either a 24 or 48 hour window that, and this is what you see with the Graf Spee, which goes in and out of Buenos Aires and whatnot down here off the River Plate, is that you could go in, and this goes back to the age of sail, go into a neutral port, get food, water, generally for, especially the, old sailing vessels, wood, because you needed wood on a wooden vessel to cook your food. And a lot of food was, I'm not going to go into all this stuff, but you needed to boil it. Salted beef, salted pork, you needed to boil it to get the salt out of it. So you can't just eat most of it cold. You needed to cook. So, and then later, of course, getting coal or wood for a coal, a solid burning steam engine, or need oil for oil burning steam engines, or as diesel engines were coming about leading up to World War II, that the Germans used fairly extensively, compared more than the Americans. Coming in, getting fuel, but then leaving. You got to stay. And then there was, I think, something like a 12-hour rule that if there was, say, a British ship in port, and a military vessel, and a German vessel shows up, and then if that British ship leaves, I think it was something, and if you want to know the rules, go look them up, but it was something, just giving you the concepts, something like 12 hours, that the one, once one declares that it's leaving, it has a 12-hour head start that it can get out. So the other one can't just immediately go and chase it and start shooting at it once it leaves national waters. So a certain amount of time. And so, which would extend how long you could stay, or would extend your stay for the other combatant in there, because that would restart the clock over. But you couldn't, legally, you couldn't cruise within the 12-mile limit to avoid contact or whatever. And this is, we'll get to here on Norway in just a moment, what happened. You could only, come out here and then go into port and then come out in a relatively efficient path. And just because did happen in World War II down here. And the British respected, and the Germans respected, Lugians respected the limits. And this is why once his time's up, he's asking permission from Hitler to allow him to stay in Buenos Aires, which then if they stay, that ship gets to be interred, which basically is either sort of confiscated by, which in this case would be the Argentine officials, or disabled from sailing or steaming by the Argentine officials, which might be damaging the ship, like taking the propellers off or something, or it might just be emptying it of fuel. And the Graf Spee was a huge diesel engine, so just pump all the diesel fuel out of it and monitor, and then maybe allow the German sailors to live on board the ship, or they would either be controlled and lived on board the ship, or put into they're not technically prisoners of war, but internment camps would be the term, that then they could, because we can look at some of the one of the there were, I believe, I'm jumping around here. I hope this is interesting. Hello, Felipe and Frog Eyes. Going to say hi. There were two Polish divisions that were equipped by France before, after Poland falls. Most of the men in the division are Polish soldiers that made it out mostly through Romania, but trickled other various sources out, as well as just Poles in exile that joined up. And they were equipped and sort of organized as French infantry divisions. If I remember correctly, one of them escapes out to Britain. I don't think it was part of Dunkirk. I think it was later, Cherbourg or some later evacuation. The other one, because where it was stationed was down in here, they did not want to surrender to Germany for multiple reasons, but possibly very bad things happening to them. They escape down to Switzerland and get interred for the war, and just sit the war out in Switzerland. Now, and again, they're in camps behind barbed wire, but everybody, they do deals with like the government to go like, hey, yeah, we're gonna live in the camp here. You're gonna provide us with food, yeah. Hey, can we have like a division? Can we have like 50 people that leave the camp every day? And then you get passes, and so they would check, and make sure you come back before other people get to leave, because they're not prisoners of war and they're not trying to escape, and they would keep checking so if too many of them disappeared, they would stop the program. So it's something about between on your honor and verifying. And the Germans could, again, they did send monitors to these things in Switzerland. The Germans could sort of monitor to see that the camp isn't just emptying out, because there were daily, well, I don't know if daily, but there were at least weekly flights between Switzerland and like Spain and Switzerland and Britain that were neutral and marked with these big red flags with white crosses in them and whatnot to fly over, and scheduled at times that everybody knew when they were flying, so don't shoot us down, so that that everybody knew, so they could theoretically be trickling out. But the Germans were monitoring to make sure that at least not too many were getting out. So these kind of internment camps weren't quite prisoner of war camps. These weren't the bad internment camps. And so, the soldiers or sailors would just be interred for the duration of the war, unless there was, and some wars they've had them in exchange protocols like, oh, hey, yeah, we can let, 500 of your prisoners go, because we'll let 500 of our prisoners, that we have of you go, and swap that back and forth. So unless there was a swap or whatever, they didn't do that in World War II, but they did that in other wars. Quite common, actually. So so you could go into national waters, but Britain. Oh, and there is the concept of hot pursuit, in that if you're out here within international law, including during wartime, if you're out here, beyond the 12-mile limit in a German vessel, and a British vessel comes in here, and the German vessel goes into Norwegian waters, the British vessel can follow and keep attacking. They're not supposed to endanger any local. We lost a convoy there. Any local Norwegian shipping or anything or whatever. So, but Britain, there was a vessel that was German flagged, that was, I think, ostensibly unarmed, and I don't know whether you call it a civilian or military. And it had, if I'm remembering all this correctly, it had a bunch of British prisoners on board. And I say it that way as I think these are crewmen that one of the surface raiders had, captured the vessel and taken the, sailors off of it. We're moving along Norwegian waters to come back in here. Britain violates, and so this is gray area at best on both sides, but comes in there, and that's one of the triggers that Germany uses to go into Norway. Now, I don't think that has anything to do with why they invaded Norway. I do know that Germany is worried about shipments of steel coming out of Sweden that are being shipped through Narvik during the long winters out here that would come out through this way. But I think the primary reason is try to get freedom of the seas. Is that Germany thinks with its air power, naval power, it can control the Skagerrak down here, this sort of area. And then with trains, link up to these ports here. There really is not a train connection up to Narvik, as far as I know. But then to be able to, and Germany did have a program of blockade runners. That very interesting stuff if you want to read about it, as well, base unarmed ships that were trying to look like other nations' vessels that would go out and get stuff. But to the idea is to have some freedom of navigation, as well as be able to slip out surface combat ships without being, and possibly submarines without being intercepted. I think that's the main reason. Now, in hindsight, we see France collapsing very, very fast and opening up this bit of the coast. Now, not that this isn't still useful, because it's more area. And definitely if we're talking Britain doing Lend-Lease, which happens later, doing Lend-Lease to Russia, having these bases up here to intercept it is quite useful, actually. But you do get the U-boat threat, because trying to get U-boats through here, this is, I'm sure you can get them through. But this is a much better area of, being able to contain them than coming out to here. And plus it makes the range, of needing to be at sea much longer. So, and this is, do realize that this is a flat map. I mean, you already know that. These distances here are relatively a lot closer, because somewhere north of here, it all, comes together. So coming out of, it's not really this long compared to this long. It's more like this long versus this long to get all the way over around here, up there. So, but if you had to come up here and then over and around, it's a lot longer. So, but this is a plausible historic. This isn't Nazi Germany not being Nazi Germany. This is just Nazi Germany not going north, which is quite reasonable. Even if, because there's no, other than the perceived easiness of taking of these, Denmark, they fight less than a few hours, and the resistance may even not be considered authorized by the government. Norway collapses rather quickly. It sort of takes a bit to get it all done, but beyond that, there's no point that they couldn't try to defeat France, and then when that failed, then push into Norway. And in fact, and Germany does have the reserves. In fact, by pushing into France and making this a contested area, well, that's what ultimately, I would say, is why the British and French withdraw from their defense of Norway, is that they're losing down here badly, and they know they can't also hold up here, so they withdraw. So if they have a lot of their forces occupied down here, they're not going to be able to effectively defend Norway. So you could always go do that later. And obviously we did conquer France and now have ports to use here. So we don't need Norway. And the only reason I'm losing ships here is because I can't fully control what the game does. I have some better controls than Hearts of Iron 3, meaning I can block off certain sea sections, sea areas, sea regions, whatever you want to call them. But in Hearts of Iron 3, I could also turn it over from auto to manually doing these supply runs and then just not have them. So for some reason, it is feeling like instead of moving supplies via railway, it wants to do it through the sea. And I can't turn it off. I can absolutely forbid them to go through certain zones, but then other things that I might want to go through here won't, but maybe I should still. Oh, let's try this. That may turn it off. So yeah, so this is a historically plausible, in my opinion, playthrough. The idea of Kampfgruppe Nord existing is not a bad idea, and whether you would have what is rather diplomatically been anti-German, but also at war with the Soviet Union, Finland, that's another questionable thing, but possible. But it wouldn't appear, this unit wouldn't appear up here and you have to withdraw it. It would just be recruited down here. So yeah, I know this is a long time and a lot of history that I hope is interesting, but I'm pleased with their direction and where they're going with the mod. And from everything from what I'm hearing about their new DLC that I don't know if it's come out or coming out soon, that Paradox is releasing, dealing with Scandinavia, I hear it's pretty bad history-wise, more fantasy than history. So I'm not pleased at what Paradox is doing. Let me take a look at the chat here and see what good things everybody's saying. Okay, if you're going to come to America, you want to go to New York. Okay, I think that they're spotted. You want to go to New York City, they spotted and sank more than a couple of U-boats. Longshore, yeah, well, I know definitely during World War II they did. Okay, BICE dropped new industry rework for the test version. Okay, good to know. Had a quick look and wow, going to be fun learning a new system. Can't wait. Both good, I hope good, and more to learn. This again, to those who this playthrough is purely for me an evaluation playthrough, and I'm evaluating it with you and stuff. Because I could have made it this far into the game in 2 weeks of just playing on my own, but I wanted to stream it for you guys and interact with you while evaluating it. So I'm evaluating it as good. Now I've got to try to, and that was then, do I spend my own time off stream just playing it to learn it well enough so I'm not trying to figure out the next thing while playing it on stream. Not necessarily become the expert on the mod or whatever, but you become familiar with it would be a good term. Okay, yes. Hi, Felipe. Germany modern industry is dying. Germany economy too. I don't know that modern industry in Germany is dying. Germany has made some very poor choices and is realizing it. I think Germany is waking up to those poor choices, and I think is reevaluating things. I'll ask that question to one of my German friends who very much works in German industry. I don't want to go into who or more detail than that right at the moment. Not that it's any particular secret, just his story to tell and not my story to tell. And I'll ask him that question if he thinks German industry is dying. He definitely has some gripes about it. I know that. Think Europe can survive without Germany? Yes, it can. I think modern German industry become dependent, or modern Germany become dependent on industry. Well, there is definitely the concept that, and this has been for many years, is that the German goal was to get a good job and own a Mercedes. That was sort of like the goal in Germany. You know, have a home. And I say home because if you're very urban, you very much may be an apartment. You know, owning or whatever, not just a cheap apartment, but a nice thing, or a bit more, you know, suburban or rural and own a house, but own a Mercedes, and which is sort of a slam by other Europeans who don't seem to aspire to own automobiles. They aspire to use public transit, either buses or trains and other things, where the Germans want to drive around, which I support Germany's idea of. Now, the modern German industry is not well, the economy is dying. Well, I don't know that it's not well and the economy is dying. I do know that Germany has been pushing renewable energy, which by that they basically mean wind and solar. Solar cells don't last long. I'm going to throw out a number of years, but somewhere between 10 and 20 years is my understanding solar cells last. But I'm damn sure they don't really last like 60, 70 years. So the solar panels need to be replaced. Where the Boulder Dam, or also known as Hoover Dam, both names are correct, down here that was built back in the 1930s, is still very much generating electricity. Yeah, but green, and I call them eco-mentalists. Yes, hello, Arno, my friend. Don't like damming rivers because it changes the ecosystem. Well, of course it does. It creates a lake. And they just hate any sort of man influence changed on the environment, whether you think it's good or bad. Or you know what? Another problem we have had, we don't have a drought anymore in California, and we have, at least currently, more water than we know what to do with, and the idea of letting, in certain cases, water overflow the dams to keep them from filling up too much. But in the last 10 years, the California Environmental Protection Agency, or whatever the hell it's called, I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but has forbidden anybody to make just about any dams in California. So if you have land, whether it could be ranch land, farmland, just land, and there's any sort of idea of a flowing stream, or even seasonal streams, they have been forbidding them from making dams on environmental grounds of protecting this, that, or some other thing, most would not be big enough to generate electricity in any meaningful amount. I'm sure you could, have some little generator that spins and something, but they would have been enough to capture some of the considerable rainfall that happens around here that then fairly quickly flows to the sea or whatnot, that you could have captured around. And just because of some supposed endangered something or other, or whatever their excuses are, they've been forbidding creating any new damming, any new dams around here, big, large or small. So, and that, I don't know if there's many good places to dam. There may be some great places to dam here. I don't know, to generate electricity. And so power has been a real problem with Germany, and the lack of power really does hurt your industry. Now, I do know that they've been tearing down windmills in Germany taking them down would be the appropriate term, and that are perfectly functional and actually functioning quite well. But they're doing some big open pit coal mining to keep their power grid functioning. I think they're just going to end up moving these windmills. Not that they're going to be trashed or destroyed or anything like that. They're just taking them down and going to have to find, I don't know if nearby or just literally the other side of Germany, just find a new location for them. But the Germans are heading towards a cliff. They have ample ability to steer away from the cliff at this point. We will see. Yes, any power. Hello, Arno, over on YouTube. So yes. Right. Okay. So so I know all that to that. I'm liking this mod. I'm going to learn this mod better and continue playing it. Okay. Now the Battle of Narva. I don't know why it's spelled with a W there, but various spellings around Europe. Was a very costly, bloody battle for both sides. Germany was pushing this way. The Soviets defending this way. This is one reason I pushed up this side, is to keep, notice they did sort of fortify it here with river crossing penalties. It would not have been pretty to come out here, but I think we will push here now, and we'll get ready to push out once we get that going. These guys are pushing north here. Now we are here. We'd like to take Leningrad. These guys are going north. These guys are going north. Now, it was mentioned earlier that there is, I think this is where they were talking about a potential for a very large pocket here. And it is a potential. Now, this is mirroring history. We're late. Now, I invaded the Soviet Union, about 60 days late. Again, one of my very big complaints is these national focuses and the days for completion. And I did choose prepare for long winter, which had a long time to prepare for it, and then other things that delayed my start, and even delayed it from the historical start. And the historical start was late because of Germany invading Yugoslavia and then coming into Greece. Germany makes it to somewhere around here. I don't know exactly on this map, but somewhere around here. Now, the German invasion suffered from multiple problems. One of the problems was just simply wear and tear on equipment, and particularly motor vehicles, and very much particularly tanks. And Germans are great record keepers. They've also destroyed a lot of their records from World War II for various reasons, as well as records get destroyed in bombings and big, firestorms and whatnot, as well as being lost because a lot of the records may have been at the divisional headquarters, and that division gets overrun by the Soviets at some point, or the Allies if it's some other place. So we don't have all the records, but we do have a lot of records. I think a minority of the records, but that's still a lot of records. And you can look at, say, pick a tank division. And we can come down here. I'll scroll a little bit faster here. And right now this one has 31 Panzer IICs, which will still definitely be used in 1941 as Germany as mainline tanks, if you will. This has 9 Panzer 1Bs. They were still around a bit, mostly being phased out or into other uses. Okay, we have 40 Panzer 3Fs. Okay, so that's very good. And we have 40 Panzer 4Ds. That for a November 1941 German tank division to be fully up on equipment would have been shocking. They would probably, and I'm just going to throw out a number here, probably be at 1/3 of their strength. That does not mean that they've had 1/3 or 2/3 losses at this point. I remember years ago reading an article about this, and somebody did look at, I don't know what tank division, but one of the tank divisions that pushed in there, that they had access to their like daily records, and they have daily returns or weekly returns. I don't know whether it was weekly or daily, that specified how many tanks that division had at any given time that were operational. And that's the key term, operational. And so a tank division that makes it this far, and figuring they started back here at East Prussia or somewhere, that has made it this far, very well may have literally 1/3 of its tanks spread out from somewhere back in here up to here in various field repair depots being fixed, waiting for spare replacement parts or whatever. Some of this is combat damage. Somebody shot and hit the front sprocket here and damaged it. So, and also hit it and damaged and tweaked the axle, and maybe they even need to get out and replace the transmission because in that impact it hurt that. But hey, the tank crew's fine. The rest of the tank is fine. The hole hasn't been penetrated. It's good to go, except for it's waiting for its part. Or maybe, hey, somebody's poked a few holes in it, maybe killing a crewman or two, but otherwise it's fine. They're waiting to patch up, cut out and place in another piece of armor or something. But the engine's fine and it could drive. So some of it is combat. Some of it is just driving it across this far in Russia. These vehicles were not made to do that. They were made to be moved on tank carriers, big trucks, either on the smaller ones on the back of trucks, bigger tanks, Panzer 3s and 4s, on a trailer, a low boy type trailer, for any great distance. But they're unable to do that for most of the trip. Now, if they're bringing up some of these tanks from some depot and they can source trucks as they're moving around and find them, yes, they would be moving them on the tank carriers if they can get the trucks with the thing and get them up there. But as you're advancing day by day by day, they're not doing that because each individual movement is not. Yeah, we're not on Kick or Rumble today, Arno. Just doing the other three services. Thanks for checking, though. So, yes, I'm normally on Rumble and Kick as well. Rumble definitely, but just started late today. So, yeah, so it wasn't all. So maybe by this point, and so losses from combat could be, catastrophic kills. You definitely see pictures that are, tanks blown apart, major hull elements warped. They're done for as any sort of vehicle. You scrap them. Maybe you might find road wheels or other bits and pieces to take off to reuse The rest just go back into the scrap heap and get recycled. Other tank damage, and we can definitely see, and this is where we have better, and mostly British sources, we have better sources on records, because the British were capturing German tanks, putting them into, or Italian in a few cases, unlucky Australians, capturing German tanks, using them, the Germans capturing them back, using them, being knocked out, penetrating their hull, killing some of the crew, or maybe just breaking down from mechanical failures and the back and forth on the battlefield. They just get abandoned. So we definitely know both sides are using the. One thing that Admiral Teague might be interested in, Rommel's headquarters unit did have a few German vehicles in it, but it had two large trucks that they captured from the British, that I think the British were using them as radio trucks, big sort of trucks with big cabs on the back, cabins on the back, that were command trucks. But all of his escort fighting vehicles, and he had escort, as part of his command headquarters, he had a combat unit that was in theory a protection for the headquarters as it's moving around, but in actuality it was also sort of a quick fire brigade to plug up an enemy breakthrough, or to use it where he saw a vulnerable spot to attack. But it was basically, the fighting vehicles were all made up of captured equipment. And so instead of taking away some tanks or whatever from his other units, when they were capturing stuff and getting it back into use, they were, marking it up with German crosses and whatnot, repainting it maybe, but everybody's using basically the same color of tan, so that didn't sort of matter. More just the markings on it, and putting them back into service against the British. And this was during the British, campaign into the east here, not so much Tunisia. But yeah, his command HQ were captured vehicles, of armored fighting vehicles of various sorts, armored cars and whatnot, with German crews in them. So whether he would be doing the same on the Eastern Front. So yeah, we do know that there's back and forth with equipment and how much it's going on. So this would be a remarkably well equipped division here. Supplies were not running that well, keeping everything equipped. And Germany definitely used things like French and Belgian uniforms, definitely used all that stuff, but not. And so, and this is represented in the mechanic here of this game, in Polish uniforms, of captured equipment. Well, they did not use this for German infantry divisions. What they did do, and not taking uniforms off prisoners. These were like overrunning warehouses, whether forward field depot warehouses or big warehouses back in, wherever. And they literally would have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of, if not millions of uniforms, boots and whatnot. What particularly they would do is re-dye these things, maybe gray, but often blue, and give them over to various internal security units. So whether units like these guys here, sometimes they might be German manned units, sometimes they would be various collaborators. Now, so you wouldn't have so much the field blouses, you would have the other stuff, but they wouldn't, by the time they're not just removing the Polish badges, they would be re-dyed and used. Now this here is just, and if I were playing at greater detail, let's see, I normally don't deal with this. they've changed the no air wings. We want to go to keep that unmotorized. Because it should not have a Gewehr 41, a semi-auto rifle that should have good combat equipment. It should have captured rifle, generic whatever. Fuel, supplies, demand. That's it. Oh, I probably shouldn't spend the time looking here now, but there at least was a setting for priority of equipment here. And I should lower these priorities down, so especially have the new equipment out to the better stuff out to the front lines. I observe you haven't put Panzer IIIs into production, the M variant. Okay, well, on that, let's see. We currently come to here. We do not have an M variant here, which is a 42. We don't yet have the tech researched 50 millimeter L60 gun. We do not have improved tank radios, and we do not have Schutzen or smoke dischargers that you have to have research to unlock. I don't think, because there isn't arrows, I don't think you have to, but this here, we need improved tank radios, which I do believe, let's come, click here. Yeah, improve. We are researching the improved tank radios, and this is one thing. Like I say, this is again my sort of evaluation of the mod. I'll need to learn it to know that if I want to have the J model available in 41, make sure that I research this radio. I have not prioritized this as a a thing yet, and I need to learn. That's what I say. Talk about is you need to learn this mod, and it will take a few playthroughs. So all of these are waiting for improved radios, except for this one is the F Aztec F chassis. So oh, that's just simply this doesn't disappear. Let's simply research this thing here. Then we could get that 81 days. Now, do I even bother with this? Do I even care about an improved Panzer II, or just keep producing my earlier Panzer IIs until I decide to stop producing Panzer IIs and research other things? So, yeah. And one of the reasons I'm so far ahead here is because, again, with this mod, it's coming through this one, which only allows me these two trees to research from. So it was just what to research it on. So that's why we're doing that. Okay, so now, historically, Leopard is great light tank. Yes, it is a great light tank. It the only, well, one, it is overly complicated to build, and what he is speaking of, well, let's come over here maybe to, well, no, maybe here, I don't know. Let's yeah. Clicking all the wrong things here. He's talking about this thing here. It's a fairly complicated vehicle to build. It has interleaved road wheels, which are great for ride smooth characteristics, but if you'll notice, basically no modern tank uses them. They all use these kinds of road wheels. The problem is that they work great until they don't. And two things with don't. One, you get stuff stuck in them, mud or whatever else, because they're interleaved, so they're harder to clean, harder to get stuff unstuck from them. And two, to get at this wheel here, you have to take off both these two outer wheels to get at that wheel behind there. So it's more of a maintenance headache, where to get at this wheel, you just get at this wheel. So I don't know of any modern system that uses it. It's a great light vehicle. The other problem with it historically, and there's all other detailed complications to make, is it has a 20 millimeter gun on it. There was talk of coming, and I know you're coming down here to this one here eventually, the 50 millimeter here, which is basically, it depends on when you talk about this tank, because this tank was never made. So you say, great. Well, they made about 100 of these or versions there. Yeah, the Loesch here. But if you are, there was definitely using this chassis with, in essence, basically this turret, which is the same turret that's used on the Puma with the 50 millimeter gun, but it also has interleaved road wheels. And then they sort of paper drew up what they might do in like 46 or 47, then is a bit more of a fantasy one. So we don't really know of that Leopard. Or were you speaking of the modern Leopards? Maybe my head's just in World War II and you were talking, oh, I said light tank. So you're talking about here. So the Loesch or Lynx, it's just German for the cat. And then the Leopard with the 50 millimeter. And whether that would have simply been the earlier tank hull with the turret that they did make for the Puma, that would have been very viable. Whether they went and did all the other production work, I don't know. But that never materialized. So I don't have a greatness for that. So they had the same debate. They, in pushing east, I think it was about 10 days, that the German army stops while the generals debate. Hitler and the generals together debate. There is forming a big pocket here. And what some of them wanted to do was close this big pocket to get a big haul, million plus prisoners, and get all the equipment. Some of it they would end up reusing, others they would, and they definitely did go around battlefields and pick up tanks and artillery pieces that were wrecks, and to recycle the steel, just to recycle the steel and any other recyclable components there. They did that, as well as captured equipment. And that's what they ended up doing, but they also delayed to debate this. Now, the delay to debate it, is one of my friends who definitely looked into this many years ago. He thinks that was really stupid. But I don't know, because that 10-day or so delay allows, like we said, that this division is incredibly well equipped, and no division that's put, if there was a Panzer division sitting back in Germany training up, that might be that well equipped, but there was no division on the front lines, Panzer or otherwise, that well equipped at this stage in the campaign. It allows them some pause to resupply, make sure you have enough fuel and bullets and food and that kind of stuff, as well as catch up your broken down and equipment to get it back working, to get replacement equipment. So there is an element of pausing to catch your breath in this whole thing. But the debate is do we push for Moscow or do we do the big pocket? They chose the pocket. And so it is the combination of the time for the debate and then the time to close the pocket. So units from Army Group Center, which is the one that's pushing towards Moscow, and Army Group South, which is pushing into Ukraine, they come here and close around this kind of thing. Now, had they not done that, some of those Soviet units and personnel and equipment would have fallen back. Some of it wouldn't, just because Stalin's, no step back orders kinds of things. And they would have eventually been surrounded and taken out anyways. And there were units that were disobeying, and falling back, and that's why some people were being shot. and other fun things like that. So it delays taking Moscow. Now, Moscow is being fortified at this time, as Germans are approaching. Plus just simply fighting in the city fighting in Moscow. So there could be a massive fight in Moscow. So if you rush to Moscow and you're defeated at the gates of Moscow, and a good chunk of the forces here escape out to fight another day, we could say militarily it would be a stupid move to fixate and move on Moscow. But one of my maxims that I learned, and I keep saying, and I know many of you who've been around heard me say this before: warfare is a political act. Politics is perception, okay? Those things are true, just simply true. So, if German troops or German tanks, and in significant numbers, not just 10 of them, but 2 or 3 divisions worth, and they're effective combat fighting force, and they're coming towards Moscow, are the soldiers going to fight? Are there going to be like when the Soviets are pushing into Berlin, you find lots and lots of German soldiers hung up on street lamps? That's because the SS were running around hanging soldiers that they thought were, whether they thought were or just getting off on hanging soldiers, or hang one and hope the other 100 will fight harder next time, continue to fight or whatever. Whatever your reasoning is, they were hanging all kinds of soldiers. Some were maybe very much trying to escape, but others, I think they were just hanging for the fun of it. Would the NKVD be trying to hang Soviet soldiers to try to motivate them to fight? Or would the NKVD be on trains with all their files and other stuff heading out to Gorky? Would they, Berlin here with the Allies pushing in, in this side, there isn't, there is talk, and there was sort of a Alpine redoubt being built, but long term, there really isn't anybody being even halfway rational isn't going to go, oh, well, we just fall back and we can continue our war. Well, you could look at falling back to Gorky, or you can look at falling back to however you pronounce that, and you're not even yet at the Urals, and you can continue your war. So they very well may have collapsed at Moscow. We just don't know. My contention is we just don't know. Now, if you take Moscow and you look at that. Now, it isn't quite, an actual railway map isn't quite that. But look at that. If you want to get something from up here, at a factory up here, and let's say there's a steel making factory up here at Yaroslav, and Tula is a major Soviet or Russian, it goes back to the Russian Empire, arms manufacturing city, which never gets taken by the Germans. They don't take Tula. Down here. It's down here. And so to get the steel from here, you've got to go through Moscow, basically. Now, there is sort of a bit of a ring around Moscow of railways connections, but it gets, like you can see here, which I love the way this new thing is. There are some lines that are thinner that are not well built up. So some of the lines do connect around, but the rail traffic they can handle is much smaller. So to get steel from here, no problem. But if you take Moscow, to get steel from here, you've got to go over here, back here, around, down here, up over here. Oh, well, we got to get to Tula. Well, maybe do we still hold here? Maybe there's realistically a more direct route. But so trains that take longer to get there, but also if you have new unit raised here, given tanks here and Gorky or whatever, and artillery pieces here, and you want to get them down to here, no problem. They go through Moscow. But if Moscow's gone, well, what's the route? How are they getting here? Moscow is such a major rail hub for the Soviet Union for strategic movement of either resources, finished goods, artillery pieces, tanks, whatever, and units moving around, and also moving food around to the needy populations from where it's grown to where it's going to be eaten. That had you taken Moscow, you might just have a collapse of the Soviet Union. But even if you don't have a collapse of the Soviet Union, it is strategically hugely important. So with looking at this, I think if I can keep, and I'm having a certain amount of trouble, and I'm sort of pushing here, I think I'm going to keep pushing in towards Moscow here, and in towards Orel here, and sort of just east here, and we are trying to hold out down here. So, and we're getting Romanian and Bulgarian and other forces here. We don't know how well they'll fight, but so I don't think I'm going to go to try to do this big pocket. Doesn't mean we won't end up pocketing. We have a lot of divisions here that just got done cleaning up a huge pocket in the Pripyat marshes. So we've already dealt with one major pocket. So I'm not that worried about missing another pocket if we move in. And hello, IKB, my good friend. How you doing? The station train staff have been on strike over government closing. Of ticket offices. How interesting, IKB. Sorry. Yeah, H35 is definitely that. Sentient jar of pickles. How are you doing? Because if tanks, I'm thinking of, are very bad. Makes government look silly. Lots of newspaper cartoons about ticket machines and online booking systems not being easy to use. Well, I'll tell you, I still, at the grocery store, I still go to the cash registers that have a person behind it and not yourself doing ones. Yeah, in the last year, maybe once I've, for some reason, used the auto checkout just because I was in enough hurry and a small enough thing. But normally I am willing to take my time and do it. And that is because I do not want people to lose their jobs, and and part of it is just literally jobs, part of it, but part of it is I do not want some of these grocery stores that I've seen in the news in which you need to sign up for on your app, and you literally don't interact with anyone. I know there's still a few people in the store, and they definitely, but I don't want that future. I want to be able to go up to a ticket window for a train and talk to somebody. Now, maybe, and so at every real station, and I don't know if you would have a stop that wasn't a station, maybe not every stop and pickup thing would necessarily, I mean, technically it might be a station, but we could argue on a few that maybe, what they used to call whistle stop, just something quickly stop, let a few people off, let a few people on and go. That might be automated, but I would say at least have one ticket window open, even if 90% of your customers are doing it through either automated machines or through your cell phones. I don't want to give up people. Thanks for garbage until the AM makes it. No. Oh, I'm doing fine. I got some extra sleep last night, so I'm doing fine now. I wasn't last night. Nothing serious, nothing big. I just wasn't feeling good. Okay. So we're gonna we're pushing him up to there. They're moving up to there. They're pushing here. Okay, these guys are pushing here. Good. So let's see. Now I want to well, I think if we can, let's move across here. I see here just visually that there's a bridge here and thinking that's going to be easier to move. No, this bridge just is eye candy for rails. It does not help your units. You do not defend or attack better across a bridge. Okay. You, the 6th Panzer Division, attack there. You support that attack just to make sure it goes harder and faster. Since these guys are already moving, so they're not entrenched. Oh, wait a minute. We're actually moving into it. Oh, we're gonna attack them directly. I know it's 2-1, but we're gonna get those guys coming here. Yeah, I'm not gonna. French tanks are debatable. They were definitely the best in 1940. They were the best World War I tanks out there. But do note that we were fighting in World War II by that point, or they were fighting in World War II by that point. So here there's only being defended by 2 divisions, 1 armored though. So we're pushing into there. You just move forward. You move forward. You move forward. You keep reorganizing. You keep moving up. I think these guys are doing well enough, so you guys start crossing the river. That way. Keep pushing up. Hey, Beam Slam. I have a card which goes for all trains and bus lines. Yeah. Maybe I'm just old. I do recognize that as a real possibility. Okay, Totenkopf, you attack that infantry division. You guys move up there. We're going to move rapidly there. And, you know, I get the idea of, you know, a universal pass thing, but, you know, having a card, whether you swap, whether it's a, a card that's, you know, you pay monthly to have unlimited use, or whether it's a, you know, something charged per use. Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe it's just the American in me that's confused by railroads. I don't know. Okay, United States protects the Dutch West Indies. Okay, this is interesting. At the request of the Dutch government, the United States of America has issued a proclamation stating that they consider the Dutch West Indies to be an integral part of their sphere of influence. They have vowed to protect the territory against any who might attack its rightful owners. Now, quite honestly, I haven't heard of this proclamation. They have a picture of FDR there. I know if there's this, if I was making this mod, if I was making a mod for this, that if I was doing that, it would have to be actually historically done. So I'm going to guess this was. Well, this is another reason why Japan attacks. Not that this gives justification. I want to be very, very clear here. No nation should be in any way forced to trade with another nation, or they're cutting off of, say, in Japan's case, in case of Japan and the U.S., cutting off of selling of U.S. oil and steel and maybe other things to Japan is in no way a equivalency or an act that would get, justify war, justify violence. No nation is, well, we demand the right to trade with you. Yeah, and I do know the historical precedent of Admiral Perry showing up to Japan and sort of saying the same thing to them. But there is similarities, but there's also very difference, because we were sort of demanding trade, but not that they trade with us. What we were demanding there was sort of opening up trade, but it's complicated, and Japan, I would say, has the right not to trade with people, even though just because the U.S. did it doesn't make it right. But it wasn't an evil act either, because we didn't shoot anybody. If they ultimately just said fuck off in one way or another, we probably wouldn't have invaded or shot anybody, bombarded any city or whatever. It was really what happened, as far as I know, and I have read a few articles, though it's been years. Japan was just shocked, the average person here, because the only people were allowed, and it was a few times a year, the Dutch to show up at one little part of Nagasaki down here that they could show up and trade with. The rest of Japan, whether it be the elites of Japan or the rice paddy workers of Japan, were shocked at the technological advancements that America had, a nation that they probably never hardly heard of, because they've only been dealing with the Dutch and before that the Portuguese. I'm not saying whatever passed for Japanese diplomatic service didn't know of America or didn't know of Britain, but I'm talking like your middle and high level management in late feudal Japan. I don't know if they've even heard of it, the United States of America. And that just shocked the hell out of them, and they modernized at that point. But yes. And at this note here, so that does put, again, more why Japan felt they needed to attack America to secure, when they were going to, once they decided to get the Dutch East Indies oil, that was the big goal. They might as well, if that was going to cause a war with the U.S. Again, it doesn't justify Japan's attack, not in the slightest, because they're attacking, and we can talk about the rightness or wrongness of colonialism generally, or Dutch colonialism in Indonesia. There are rights and wrongs on anything we can talk about, and there are definitely good things about colonialism. I generally think, on the whole, in most cases, it was good, but we can talk about that. But they were the sovereign owners of the Dutch East Indies. I would say these were basically before the Dutch showing up, a lot of bandit kingdoms raiding each other and butchering each other, and we can talk about rights, and we can talk about rights and wrongs of things and rights of people, but even if both sides are doing it, this tribe versus that tribe, do we put up with, they have the right to have their little war. What's our place to stop it? Well, obviously we're going to have to kill people to stop it, and they're both going to decide to fight us until they find out they can't win, or if they think they keep winning, they're going to keep fighting. We can look at Indonesian and Indochina wars and whatnot. But butchery and mayhem, do we just allow it to go rampant part of the world? That is an interesting question, and that is sort of some of what the UN is supposed to be dealing with, and wars break out. And now, should it always be the U.S. going in everywhere? No, shouldn't always be the U.S. Not that they shouldn't do it some of the time, but colonialism is, to me, not a bad word. But whatever you want to say about it, colonialism, generally speaking, But whatever you want to say about it, we definitely see down here this was Dutch territory, and not wanting wars to spread, the U.S. goes, hey, because they remember at this point, Japan has already grabbed up French Indochina, from France. So they don't want to see the Dutch, who are occupied by the Germans, lose that, or the British lose, which aren't occupied and at war. So again, it's not a bad policy for America to have. It does definitely put us, as we can look back on a collision course for war with Japan. That isn't necessarily a bad thing, because at some point, and we can talk about, and I know a lot of people, and I do have sympathy and I maybe agreement on some of their points of, non-interventionist America. Ron Paul, too extreme. If you're in his camp, I think you're too extreme on retreat from the world. But Lindsey Graham, if there's a conflict, the U.S. must join it, I think is too far on the other side. So, yeah, I'm somewhere, case by case, for U.S. involvement. Doesn't necessarily even mean primary involvement on intervention. But yeah, that does put us on a course for war with Japan. Now, Japan was also, committing major war crimes, not just having a war, but committing major war crimes while having a war with China. Whether you believe aggressive war should be a crime or not, I'm going to go no, because that's too blanket of a statement. Because war of aggression for conquest, and I know I was going to end this thing here, but on a philosophical thing, is war of aggression. And let's go here. We're going in to denazify the Ukraine. I use the word "the" in there intentionally, not Ukraine. The current Moscow propaganda for the invasion of Ukraine. And it's very true that there are a significant number, I'm not saying a majority, because when we look at the Azov battalion and others, there are Nazis or neo-Nazis or others, because I don't know, other sort of pseudo-Nazis. They're definitely going on in Ukraine. Do we invade them just because there's Nazis? If we find Nazis in Florida, do we invade Florida? Even if the government, whatever, about those particular Nazis, just because there's a few Nazis there, do we invade Florida just to root out the Nazis in Florida? Right. And that's their justification. I am not in agreement with that justification. Yes, the Kiev government, as far as I could tell, is corrupt. I don't know whether it's more corrupt or less corrupt than the Moscow government. They, without any real knowledge, I sort of figure they're both equally corrupt. So that doesn't make getting rid of a corrupt government somewhere a justification. But then I was focusing in here is whether, okay, what if tomorrow South Korea felt that they had located all of North Korea's nuclear weapons, know where they were, and had aircraft ready to go with, bunker penetrating bombs and missiles enough to knock out their nuclear arsenal. Let's just say that. And they believe the North Korean army, it has huge amounts of tanks, but they're mostly 1950s tanks, and they are mostly rust buckets, and the engines won't start on them, so it doesn't really matter that they're there. And for some reason, whether it's China's bogged down in a war with Taiwan, or bogged down in a war with Vietnam, or just somehow magically they believe China will not intervene in this conflict, South Korea wants to invade North Korea. Now, looking here, and we'll get to some of the chat here in just a moment, guys. Most of us in the West, shall we say, You show me a government without corruption. Yes, IKB, and it's to a degree degrees of corruption, but yeah. We would cheer on the South Korean aggression against North Korea because we see, although orderly, I would say, compared to collapsing states in other parts of the world, um, North Korea is a very, very oppressive place. You see photos of North Korean soldiers, and there's some famous ones, standing next to American soldiers and South Korean soldiers. And both of the American and South Korean soldiers are towering over the North Koreans. And again, that shows you diet is effective. Europeans, and when I was living in Europe back in the 90s, I don't know if it's changed considerably. There were a few Europeans as tall as me. I'm, over 6'1", not quite 6'2". So 6'2" in my, shoes with a little bit of heel on them, not even a full inch of heel, but I was much larger than most people in Britain that I was around by multiple inches, and stood out in the crowd for my height, but not like a NBA star or somebody would stick out. And I'm genetically, as far as I know, from the people of Britain, so there is no genetic differencing between me and them, and I'm so I am genetically those people. So this is not a genetic thing. This is a diet thing, in my opinion. And personally, I think that I do have. One of my grandfathers was a butcher, so definitely grew up with more beef in my diet than probably most Americans. We had beef a lot, and part of that was before meat was going bad, but when it was sitting in the counter too long and fresh meat was coming in, the family would get it a little cheaper. It just doesn't appeal because it sort of starts to brown a little bit, so it doesn't appeal in the the meat showcase. And this is back in the 70s when I was growing up as a kid. Kind of thing. And so it's not like the sort of modern grocery store. And they most stores were not the pack, or they were final butchering in the stores, in most places, still in those days. So, and my grandfather owned a butcher shop that was part that was attached to a larger grocery store, but he owned the butcher part of it and ran it. It was an owner operated with maybe like one other employee at times. So just more beef in my diet than would be normal. Maybe for my economic class, more steaks per week just because of that. Because otherwise they were either highly discounted to just get them out, or they would go bad eventually. But you don't, again, just for your information, once they're cooked, you wouldn't notice the difference. And you actually they age beef. You don't slaughter the cow, when you have it. And you can slaughter the cow and eat it immediately, and cook it, eat it immediately. But properly beef that you get is aged for a while in a refrigerated type condition. Just give you guys information on that. But so yeah, it wasn't at all tasting bad. And so that might affect me being a bit taller than others, getting a little more beef, a little more protein in my diet, and not just beef as an ingredient in a in a British pie thing or something has a bit of beef in it. No, having a steak often, not like every night by any means, but having a steak a lot and having a lot more ground beef and a lot more of that kind of stuff in my diet maybe than others, including Americans growing up in my time. So so we might all agree that that South Korea going in to conquer North Korea and then going through the process of reunification, we might all cheer them on. But would we do the same if, for whatever reason, the U.S. withdraws from Asia, China, gets Taiwan, Japan is becoming isolationist, and North Korea aggressively attacks South Korea, we would be like, oh, wars of aggression are evil, blah, 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 blah. The North Koreans want to be conquered by South Korea because look at how much better the lives of South Korea are. I know at least one German who's an East German. I know several people that are East Germans. Isn't necessarily terribly happy to be part of West Germany because he sees West Germany as a decadent society. He's glad not to be a communist, and he very much said, and he was a young kid when the wall fell at the time. I don't know if he sort of kind of maybe remembers it. I don't, but definitely from that sort of, and he talks about my nation was stolen from me or something. He's used those terms in talking with me at times. And he definitely says his parents, oh man, it was bad under East Germany. Now he just saw it as a kid, not as an adult. So his parents were very much cheerful that East Germany collapsed and becomes part of, unified Germany. But he's sort of like looking around and seeing Western decadence in Germany and wanting more order in Germany, as a German might want more order. Germans like order. They want more order. And so not necessarily, I don't know if a majority or minority they might want off of the heavy-handedness of North Korea, but they might see South Korea as decadent. They might want the economic success and the, full, we'll use the old Chinese term, full rice bowl, big meals every day. But they might not want the other aspect of it. So are wars of aggression in of themselves a war crime? I'm going to go no. No, they're not in and of themselves. We got to look at it case by case. And I think it was a mistake to charge German leadership at the Nuremberg trials for crimes of wars of aggression. Now, we could all talk about all the war crimes that happened during the war, that they were a part of either directly in that they, ordered them, participated in them, and blah, 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 or their wars that they supported facilitated these other war crimes happening. So, yeah, that's plenty good enough to whether it's execution or life imprisonment or just 10, 20 years in prison or whatever we deem for those crimes. Plenty. So I'm not necessarily complaining about any of the government leadership. I'm talking about just generally government leadership, like somebody like Rudolf Hess, who I think he flies out and goes to Britain before the final solution starts. Now, there's already some war crimes happening, even before he goes out, and he was definitely in agreement with them. So I'm not saying Rudolf Hess is blameless, God no, or whatever, but I think just simply calling a war of aggression illegal, as far as I know, and I've seen evidence that's presented, the Russians have committed war crimes in their war with Ukraine. Okay. So, and Putin is ultimately responsible for them, whether he ordered them or not. And to the best of my knowledge, he has not just repudiated any of the crimes that have happened. He has not specifically brought people to justice. Yes, we can, again, I know I'm talking on about other things, but I guess I feel like it at the moment. There is the My Lai incident where I think it was a lieutenant or some definitely captain or below, and some, platoon or whatever of soldiers burning a village and killing a bunch of people. There was a court martial. They went to jail. Okay. So the President of the United States is in no way responsible for the My Lai incident because our military justice system went after these criminals. Okay. So just because somebody commits a crime in your army, and we can also look at the Abu Ghraib prison. I don't know that anybody died there, but under the American situation, that was sort of famous during there. But again, those people went to prison because of what they did in running the prison. So yeah, it's America's fault in that we had the wrong people running the prison, but we took care of it once we became well enough aware of it. So it is not the same thing as uh, as what we're seeing with Nazi Germany, at all. So yes, you can point to crimes that happened, and I'm sure we could probably find, whether we actually prosecuted or not, something that would, under Geneva Conventions or current law, that America would have been considered. And I don't mean necessarily dropping some bombs in Switzerland, that just things that happen, but something that might be a war crime. And there's definitely been U.S. soldiers convicted of rape, whether they're raping some French woman or some German woman or something. There's definitely some of those things that happened, most assuredly. But sort of larger scale war crimes, we might be able to find a few that America, or some Americans, but it was never a policy, that we can see in Nazi Germany for World War II. Again, as far as I know, and I know some people, perfection in war, bullets that only kill evil people and bombs that only kill, combatant targets, and well, that didn't exist and whatever. So yeah. Okay. Now we will end this episode. Live stream will continue, and I will be checking out the chat here. So yeah, see you all then next time. Let's see what the chat has been saying while I've been rambling here. Okay, let me go up here. Okay, bunch of stuff. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well said, you gamer. U.S. should show it's against evil, but only play World Cup when absolutely necessary, and never for FAG again. They had their chance. Yeah. Yeah. It's and for the U.S. sometimes I am very much for American naval power and air power, sort of along with that use. And we're seeing China there's a reef out right around here that at least tidally exposes to the surface, if not always on the surface, that the Philippines docked or took an old tank landing ship and drove it ashore intentionally. And they've been keeping Philippines soldiers, we'll call them. I don't know whether they're sailors, Marines, or because the Philippines does have a small Marine Corps of some sort, I believe. Whatever it is, a few people on military forces on it to say that this is our territory, and then of course they get 12 miles around that reef, and then they get however big the economic zone for drilling for oil or fishing, but you can still sail ships through it. Well, the Chinese Coast Guard had been harassing in that they're shooting water cannons that could conceivably be lethal level water cannons. These aren't just normal fire hoses from stuff. These are like super fire hoses that they use to shoot onto another ship, to put another ship out of fire, to keep these boats and I think keeping a few of the deliveries from happening, of food and water and whatnot, and spare parts to keep I think they do have a desalinization machine on board or whatever, but to keep that from happening. Well, the U.S. Navy, along with Japan and along with Australia and maybe somebody else, has been showed up in this area now again. We had sort of abandoned the zone, and all those Chinese Coast Guard ships have left, and there have been no even attempts at blocking resupply, with the U.S. ships very much in the area. And similarly, in the last 6 months or so, I think it's like 4 tankers. Iran has literally boarded and captured and pirated basically off the high seas in what the international community would call international waters, and not because they somehow strayed into Iranian waters, as the international community would recognize it, and have captured these vessels. And they have various justifications for the captures. I don't think they're random, because there's so many ships going in and out every day. They either belong to a particular company or a particular government or whatever. Well, the U.S. has again moved back into the Persian Gulf, and these have all stopped. I mean, it's not even like they're starting to, and the U.S. is chasing them away. No, they're just, because we're sailing around the area again, they're not. So I am definitely for American, just about anywhere on international waters, America keeping peace. So if you've got any sort of conflict, and we can pick a side, pro-Philippines over China or whatever, we can pick a side, and not just to keep two sides apart. We can pick a side. And I'm very much for U.S. intervention in the seas, in international waters. And if there is, I don't know, pick some random civil war or, war somewhere in Africa, including there's stuff going on in Niger right now. ECOWAS, the sort of coastal nations here, are at war, getting ready to go to war to reverse a coup that was supported by the Wagner Group or whatever. Well, I don't really support U.S. soldiers being involved in it, but maybe, and we could talk about whether we, the Wagner Group may be evil as all hell, or it may not be. But, and I'm not talking, and it's the same group that's fighting up in here and famous, all that stuff. But I've never been to Africa, so it's not me, but I've known mercenaries, Americans and others, that you would literally call mercenaries, and others that just ended up serving in Rhodesia and serving in South African armies, some of them later going on to be mercenaries. They're dealing with a very chaotic part of the world, and I don't know if any of the people I ever met just like intentionally, I mean, they wouldn't have told me if they had, mowed down civilians, but in their fighting going on here, I'm sure whether they pulled the trigger or somebody else pulled the trigger, I'm sure or bombs got dropped, I'm sure civilians got killed or wounded in fighting that they had participated in these various wars around here. Some might be, if you look at Liberia, where Charles Taylor and whatnot, genocide or mass killings going on of civilians, that some of these mercenaries were definitely on, whether they were being angels in the fight, they were definitely on the side of the good guys, if you will, or whether they're just on the side of the paymaster. So I don't know that just because it's Wagner Group overthrowing the country government here, if that's a reason for us to want to oppose it, or if it's because it's now more pro-Russian instead of pro-French, and between Niger and Mali over here, a lot of Europe's, but particularly France's, uranium comes from and whatnot. So there's strategic reasons. But the right or the wrong of it, trying to put the other government, which I'm sure was corrupt, back into power, I'm not against. I mean, we got to look at it, but I'm not, yes, there is a problem, not that it's Wagner that did the coup, there's the problem that it's putting it into the Russian camp. But is it worth a war? Well, I don't know. But, I don't know. But say if they do decide to want to do this, I'm not necessarily against the U.S. providing some heavy, aircraft lift, the even C-130, transports or whatever, to do some logistical support. But I don't want to see American ground troops in Niger. Let the French do it. Let the other people do it, the fighting. And so we can help out in some of these wars. We can be involved in some of these wars without putting any ground troops in there. So that's my thing. So very, very pro sea use of power. Limited pro, and we gotta look at individual things. When Al Qaeda attacks the U.S. directly, and when the Taliban supports that, not just doesn't want to hunt them up for us, but actively supports Al Qaeda, then yeah, we need to go into wherever, Afghanistan or wherever. That doesn't mean we want to rebuild Afghanistan or occupy it forever. But if they attack us again, well, we should come in heavy and hard and put that big heavy boot down on them, so that they don't want to ever attack us again. But that doesn't mean we want to stay around forever either. So yeah, it all depends on that. They're using war crime. They were using the term war crimes in the 1800s. Oh yes. Oh yeah. There was. Yeah, we can look at war crimes going well back into the Age of Lace. Most assuredly. Let's see. Spanish government is garbage and corrupt for the moment. Yeah, all governments to some degree are corrupt. To some degree. Imagine Russian buying old North Korean tanks to refit them to throwing them into Ukraine. They might. You're taller than, well, okay, I could be, like I say, I'm taller than a lot of Europeans, and well, I've just said how tall I was, so not quite 6'2", but over 6'1", so just sort of right in that sort of zone. Okay, Pickles is leaving. Fine, thanks for hanging out. He probably already left by now. What is that in centimeters? I don't know. Okay, well, the one nation is bad. Conflict is another. Yeah. There is illegal war, but they may not be war crimes per definition. And that's more on how you do the actual warfare, in my view. Yeah, and we could talk, again, recent U.S. involvement in two major wars. One, Afghanistan, I definitely demonstrated, and no one really was, except for a few nut jobs, and even a lot of them still believe that Al Qaeda attacked us. It's just inside job bullshit. But no one's Afghanistan and or their proxy. Al Qaeda definitely attacks the U.S., so that is internationally justified. An American attack on it. And we had the UN's permission for Iraq 1 and Iraq 2, because Iraq 1, they, invaded Kuwait, and Iraq 2, well, it was very clearly that the ceasefire agreement that Iraq signed, they violated many, many times, so justification for U.S. to go into Iraq. So we had the legal, well, you can talk moral all day long about it, but we had the legal justification to go into Iraq the second time, just because there were no fly zones. They flew in them. They bombed targets in the no-fly zone. So not just a plane or a helicopter flew. We had evidence of them attacking, and they agreed to the no-fly zones. Well, they agreed when you invaded. Yes, they lost the war after they invaded Kuwait. We sort of forced that agreement on them, yes, but they agreed to it. They flew in the no-fly zones. When our aircraft that were patrolling over the no-fly zones not only were targeted by radar, but they launched missiles. Now the mere fact that they didn't shoot aircraft down that I can remember, NATO, because they're not always the U.S. I think it was mostly Britain was the other nation there, but flying over there, the mere fact that they were unsuccessful, but that they launched missiles just because our systems are good enough, they fired at our aircraft. Okay, so that also individually gives us justification. Whether we talk about weapons of mass destruction and other issues is another thing. We got hoodwinked, and I forget who, I saw a documentary on the guy, an Iraqi defector lies to the U.S. government. The U.S. government wants to believe him because they want the justification. They don't check out to see if it's a lie. It just sounds plausible. And he was not just a random guy off the street. He was somebody that was verifiably in the know of Iraq's weapons of mass destruction program. But he, for whatever reasons, and they go into some of the stuff in the documentary I saw years ago, 10 years or more ago, he lies about the train cars and some of the other stuff, flat up lies about him. But he was somebody that would have been able to have that knowledge. So it wasn't just some random person making up conspiracy theories and we wanted to believe them. It was a credible source that lies to the U.S. government. And the U.S. government decides, well, hey, this guy must know. He's telling us the truth, and we like what we hear. So, yeah, they've got weapons of mass destruction. Let's go in. So when Colin Powell, and I do respect the guy. I don't always agree with everything he did or said as whatever, but I do respect Colin Powell highly, actually. Respect him. That doesn't mean agree. When he comes up and gives that UN demonstration, he is not lying. He believes it. And all of that stuff was given to them by a source from Iraq. Now, the mere fact that a good chunk of it was straight up lies, that wasn't the U.S. lying. It was the source was lying. And the U.S. didn't question it, didn't do enough research well enough to do that. But still, even without that, they still broke the no-fly zone agreement, which means the ceasefire is over. And they also shot at aircraft that were patrolling the no-fly zone area, which also means the ceasefire is over and gives us justification under the original agreement going into Iraq. So, yes, the U.S. is legally justified in its two most recent major invasions of nationally recognized territory. So that Hess was captured in spring 41, if I call it right. Yeah, but it was 41, 42, I think is when the final solution is decided upon. Admiral Teague, I'm not always great in going through the chat some more with exact dates, but it's around there is when the final solution. There's already been plenty of war crimes, but the big one hadn't started yet when he flees or is just there. Oh no, the humanity. Okay, the U.S. and U.K. troops perhaps executed more prisoners on the Western Front than the German troops did. I don't think so. Okay. You have the Germans. Okay. I'm not going to. One SS or a major part of one SS division is moving through a region in France. Like an office or a small group of them gets killed in an ambush by partisans. The SS goes in and rounds up everybody in the town and executes them. So by rounding them up, they make them prisoners. You know, they were civilians, but they were prisoners, and they execute them. When the Canadians, the Canadian divisions around the invasion of, Normandy here come in, there's one of the divisions fighting them is the SS division, the Hitler Youth SS division there. And I think it's quite well documented that a few of these Hitler Youth execute some Canadian prisoners. And there are several famous photos, some of them, of the same people, but several others that have Hitler Youth prisoners in them that have bloody noses and otherwise sort of banged up. And it is understood that these bloody noses and otherwise banged up were done by the Canadians after capture because of what the division had done to some of their men. That was an execution. And you can talk about Malmedy later on with the SS executing some American prisoners. I don't know. Okay, now, the mere fact that one guy or 50 guys raise their hand and start moving down the road to you, hands up, and they're saying, this shoots and don't shoot, hands up, don't shoot. You can machine gun them down legally under war. You do not have to accept their surrender, okay? They are not yet prisoners. Because, and I did sort of feel bad, the idea of like a German soldier with a Panzerfaust, the one-shot anti-tank bazooka thing, popped up, fires at a tank, maybe knocking, maybe destroying it, maybe just damaging it, and popping up and then immediately going hands up, firing it. The big black back blast, knock that tank out, immediately hands up, and there's film footage of it, so it was done live. Few of the rare times actually caught on live on film of that machine gunners from either that tank or some tank in there machine gunning down that German or those Germans. And sometimes there were like one or two of them, or two or three of them, and machine gunning them down. Yeah, they were surrendering, but they had not yet been made prisoners. You do not. There was a really great. It was done in post-Vietnam America in the late 1970s. I think like 78, 79. A PBS series on the legalities of war. I've watched, it's been a long time, but they sit around, they have a bunch of legal experts back at the time, but also soldiers, and they talk about the legalities of war. And there is no obligation to accept somebody's prisoner, because you may be coming in and you may have like stormed the bunker, and then they're all, or the entrenchment, they all may be raising their hands. But there may be one, foxhole over, guy still fighting. And you're there, you've got a gun, and there's three guys here. And if you start pointing your gun over at the other guys that are shooting at friendly soldiers, well, these other guys might be able to pull a pistol out, get a bayonet, throw a grenade at you. You can't cover both the guys that you've just come upon that are surrendering. You haven't quite captured them yet. You haven't taken them prisoner yet. And there you need to engage, and you're all alone. You're Audie Murphy, and you're all alone. And because he was alone in his famous shootout that he did. That, and I'm not talking about Sergeant York in World War I. That's a different thing, where they did capture a huge number of Germans. And there's another group that you need to engage. Well, are you going to let these guys how are you going to keep them from, because they've dropped their guns. They can go pick them right back up. What are you going to do? If you keep them all covered, yeah, you can probably keep them covered and walk them back to your lines, but there's other enemies shooting at your buddies. So you can't keep them covered, and you don't have time to tie their wrists and bind them up. There's not enough people there to do that. You're perfectly legitimately, legally, and I would also say morally at that point, because there's still action going on. We can talk about morally and some other things. You can shoot all the guys that just raise their hand and then go on to shoot the guys that are still fighting. That is still, and they examine this in this sort of mock trial roundtable type discussion that they pose some of these scenarios on, and what's legal and what's not. And this is in the post-My Lai massacre era, and they're examining all what the legalities of war. So the mere fact that somebody is surrendering doesn't mean you need to accept the surrender. So I don't know that the U.S. executed prisoners. Now, they very well may, again, executed more people that were attempting to surrender than the Germans did. But it's that attempt part that distinguishes them. And of course, the U.S. are taking huge amounts of prisoners. Hello, Sebastian. How you doing? Don't know quite that word you're saying, whether it's a place or whatnot. Okay. Quite common when happening during battle, usually go unnoticed. This is China. Yeah. Okay. That's why I understand Polish preparations for war. Yes, they're preparing for war in Poland for sure. President Bush won and coordinated through his 2-year term to enforce a no-fly zone. Absolutely. SS criminal group, just like the Wehrmacht. Well, the SS is on a whole nother order of bad beyond the Wehrmacht. And I think you mean the army by what you're saying there. There's such a myth in the West that we did not murder half of the Polish nation. I don't know exactly what you're saying there. I think we have culturally definitions of prisoner. Yeah, well, I'm talking about not cultural definitions. I'm talking about legal definitions of prisoner. Once you take a prisoner. Meaning if you go, the mere fact that they're surrendering is not does not define them as prisoner. My definition of surrendering soldier is also prisoner at that moment. Yeah, no, okay, that's definitely not the legal definition under all the laws of war that I'm aware of. And I don't know that there's any obligation to take prisoners. As far as I know, there is no, even if they're not under threat. Because until they have been properly made prisoner, meaning searched, rendered secure, could be like putting, binding their hands and feet or something, or putting them under guard, putting them in a temporary field camp or whatever like that. Until they've been properly rendered as prisoners, they are by definition dangerous, because they can literally pick up a rock and hit you over the head with it, or a stick, or find a grenade, or take out a knife and stab you when your back is turned. And so, and we definitely see, very much in the Pacific with Japan, false surrenders and suicide attacks. We definitely see, so even if there's 100 of you and 4 of them, and the mere fact that they pop up with their hands up doesn't mean that you need to stop shooting. So, and I'm talking as a legal defined, UN-based, League of Nations-based, other Geneva Convention-based laws of war. And I have literally had classes, not just this one PBS thing, but I have literally gone through classes on the laws of war taught by people way back in my youth, and what they say about these things. So the laws are what I'm talking about. Not national policies, not morality of the situation. But yeah, so if you're just talking about anybody vaguely trying to surrender, yeah, I'm sure there were a lot of allied people not doing it. Now, I remember reading of, I think it was reading or hearing of a case, but a case that was somewhere here, in Western Europe, that there was some German prisoners as sort of in another like room or area of like a field hospital, and they were there. And it could have been in Italy, but it was while the war was fighting, I think it was in Western Europe. For some reason, in comes some Polish soldiers from, one of the Polish units that, are equipped by Britain. And they go in and they see the Germans in this one room, and one or more of them, because this was told by somebody outside of the room, they just open fire and shoot the Germans and walk out. And this was told as mistaken uniforms, because these guys were wearing black uniforms, supposedly, according to the story. I don't know if the story's true, but according to the story, they were wearing black uniforms. Well, the story is that the Polish thought that these were SS guys. They were panzer troops. The SS had given up wearing black uniforms, unless they were SS panzer units. The guys who drove the tanks. The idea of black was so that the uniforms would look good, even though they might get grease stains. It's not like something you can maybe easily wash out of a field gray, dirt from the field, but grease stains on the uniform, so it would be around the tanks, and inside the tanks may be sort of greasy and dirty too, to keep their uniforms looking nice. So they got to wear black, and it goes back to a Napoleonic era Prussian, or not Prussian, well, Prussian, no, Brunswick unit. Brunswick in English, Brunswick unit that wore black during the Napoleonic War, that was fighting against the French in exile. that then goes back and forms. So it was a cavalry unit. So, and it was black over in mourning for their Prince of Brunswick that died in the battle. Sort of the history of the uniform that ends up being the Panzer uniform. And so, and everybody was sort of in shock that these Poles did it, and they walk out, and like no one really identified who these Poles supposedly, what their names and faces were. So that would be a war crime if that incident did happen. Again, I'm not saying it did happen, but if the incident did happen, and I think it very well could have happened, that would be a crime. But not everyone's being arrested for doing something like that. What's going on? That is, there is no moral code that distinguishes us from others. Yeah, well, there is. Yeah, I will say that there are moral codes and that are important, but I'm talking again the legalities of war here, and whatnot. So, well, let's get back to playing some of the game here. I'm going to turn on my air conditioner. It's starting to get a little warm here. It's now almost noon, so let me turn it on, and I'll be right back. My father wanted to kill everyone. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I don't know what your grandfather's life was like, and he might be justified depending on his life, but that does seem a bit extreme. That definitely seems extreme here. All right. Let's continue this. Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 4's Black Ice. And I want to thank Tim, Strongarm, Niagro, Timothy, Sir Toyjet, Gary, Garrett, Marcus, Folk, and of course the great Hoffmanator for support over on Patreon. But everybody, all I really ask anybody to do is like the videos. Hope I'm doing a good enough job that you'll do that. And of course, if you're new, subscribe. And post comments are also helpful. My father said after the war he merely wanted to stay wasted for about 17 years. Well, I can understand that too. War is a trauma. Yeah. All right. So we have a faction that we can invite to our war. We can invite Iran. Okay, we'll do another quick history lesson. Iran in World War II. We can talk about the use, and this does not look like Raja Pahlavi. Well, maybe as a very, very young guy it might, but he was white-haired by the time World War II happens, and bald on the top, and I think just had a mustache and not a goatee. But yeah, I mean, he looks vaguely Iranian or something maybe, but other than that, I don't know. They had been internationally known, not necessarily internally known, but internationally known as Persia. During the 1930s, they wanted to appear and seem like a more modern country. They definitely wanted to modernize. They wanted to at least get internationally known as Iran, and that is supposedly meaning Aryan, a version of Aryan, and that they specifically go and have various meetings and connect to Nazi Germany and their Aryanist movement. They are trying to say, we are Europeans too, we are Aryans too. And so there is, and again, the mod that I made for Hearts of Iron 3's Black Ice covers this in some detail with some events that happened. that Iran is moving closer to National Socialist Germany, emphasizing Aryan and trying to say we are that too. I don't know that the Germans were fully on board with that idea that they were Aryans also, but the German, because they had several meetings with Hitler, and they sort of nodded and went along with it, because I don't think it was harmful, from their viewpoint, harmful. Now, when the war breaks out, Iran is at peace, and it tries to stay at peace, unlike Iraq, which does revolt against their sort of British overlords. Their British imposed king. Faisal, their King Faisal. Now you'll see him famously played with very good makeup by Alec Guinness in the Lawrence of Arabia movie. It is that King Faisal that was down here leading a particular Arab tribe that the British install in Iraq as king of Iraq. Now he is sort of trying to become some sort of king up somewhere in here, or maybe earlier along here, but he accepts the gig of being king of Iraq. So he is put in. I don't know if he ever literally visited Iraq prior to being installed as king there and having his tribe move in with him into Iraq to rule Iraq as a British protectorate, with the idea that he was the king and Iraq was a country, but it was under a protectorate, unlike a direct colony, which Cyprus was a direct colony of Britain. It was owned by Britain, shall we say. It was a direct colony. This was a local government that Britain oversaw. The Iraqis revolt against Faisal. I guess maybe this guy, not quite sure, but they revolt and they fight Britain for a while, briefly, until they lose. Iran stays at peace until I think it's 1942. I'm not sure, but it's after America enters the war. They wait till after the Americans enter the war. Russia is getting eventually, and not necessarily in 42, and the map is a lot closer. There are planes being flown from Alaska to large numbers eventually to Vladivostok or some other airports, maybe even up in Sakhalin, to the Russians, to the Soviets, that the Japanese do not intercept because they are worried about opening another front with Russia. There are ships that are flagged, and not just literally flying a flag, they literally paint the flags on the side of the ships and send to the Japanese shipping schedule so they know where and when they're being shipped, that were Russian flag ships that were coming out of American and or Canadian ports and going to, again, Vladivostok primarily. But this is a trickle. And part of the problem is this great distance. And I am not sure, even if in World War II, if the railway is actually connected, the one that goes to Vladivostok. I believe, I don't know World War II. Again, we can sort of kind of look here. Because of these mountains here. I believe in World War I, but I'm not sure even there exactly. But for a long period of time, they literally come into here and then take a ferry across and then connect to the railway. And I believe the ferries that are actually would, I believe, and it's been a long time since I've seen anything on this. I believe you can literally drive the train on, in some cars, and maybe you would load up, I don't know, I'm just guessing here, 8 cars long, 4 cars wide, track wise, and then they would go and then be quickly offloaded. So not even like loading and taking the stuff off the train and loading it on. They just load the train cars loaded onto the ferry and go on. That was at least for a while. This is Lake Baikal, very, very, very deep lake. Maybe by World War II this is connected. I'm not sure. I know for game purposes they can't have it come here and then have it port-wise. If you notice on all these Paradox games, there are no ports in the Caspian Sea. all the seaports have to be connected. There are no lake ports that do not have a sea connection. So I guess nothing through the St. Lawrence Seaway here is connected in a Paradox game, and it has something to do with their engine. You cannot have multiple, or it appears to be, you cannot have multiple oceans. So if you go back to, and I always thought this was weird, this goes all the way back to EU, the original, which I played way back when, before I even heard of Paradox. I was always wondering why there were no ports along here, or any of the other games, which when there were, because they're not connected. And it's something to do with their engine. This is gone. This is literally gone. The Soviets dried up the Aral Sea. But Baikal is super, super deep and whatnot. So, but even if you get to here, and there wasn't that many ships that the Soviets could flag to run, that the Japanese would do it, you had to transfer all of the stuff all the way along here to get to the front. And of course, as we talked about earlier, I'll get to the chat in just a moment, earlier with the Germans sitting up here, they were bombing from aircraft. They were submarines coming out from bases along here. There were motor torpedo boats that were dashing out. And there was, well, for a while, there was the Tirpitz and other large surface warfare vessels that would come after convoys up here. And especially summer was bad because you could see very, very far, because it was daylight for, well, in summer for part of it, all 24 hours a day. So it was bad to do it. And at winter, Archangel was iced in, so you had to land up here in Murmansk. And the ice closed down in further, so it reduced your area of maneuver as well. The ice cap would grow in winter and retreat in summer a bit. So that was an issue there. So I believe it was in 42 that the Soviet Union and Britain, I don't know how much the dividing line was done prior to the invasion, but versus just simply who occupied what areas first. But in a mostly bloodless military invasion, I don't want to de-emphasize the military invasion, but it was basically no fighting. Britain and the Soviet Union occupy Iran with the primary reason for it, and not just external justification, but actual reason for it, was to move huge numbers of huge amounts of Lend-Lease supply to Russia. And this is why, again, we can look here. Stalingrad is so important. Because if you get Stalingrad, and then, of course, you get here, there are no, and we can see some sort of vague sense of, and I think this is more or less correct, some vague rail lines moving around here, but there is nothing. Here's Astrakhan, the famous, Russian steppe city or Eastern steppe city fabled. But we can see here that this is just desert out here. So everything needs to come through here. So if the Germans had taken Stalingrad, yes, there's railways here. Yes, I think the pipeline that comes out of Baku, there is a pipeline. I think it comes closer to Stalingrad. I'm not absolutely sure on all of this. I don't know that this is entirely correct, exactly where there's rails. I think there is a railway along here. But a massive amount of the goods get put on board local shipping and move up to here and then move up this river. There is, by World War II, so this started by World War II, these two are connected through a canal system. Maybe really small ships, not normal ocean-going things, but things that we would call a ship, but definitely things that we would call a canal barge, are connected up through here so that via water routes in summer, because this will freeze over in winter, in summer are able to connect the Caspian to the Black Sea. But again, during summer, there is a lot of barge traffic up into here, into the various rail systems. So Stalingrad, and then once you get Stalingrad, could potentially allow you to cut off more. So Stalingrad is a major key in why the Russians fight so hard for it. Because if they don't fight hard for it, the Germans take it and secure it, it's not just a particular German victory and or propaganda victory of Germany defeating Stalingrad, Stalin's namesake city, but it is a strategic location that allows it to. And to give you the scale of American aid, and there's also British aid going, British tanks, British made equipment going to Russia, but to give the scale of American, of two different models of large military trucks, and these are only two different models, and one, and I read this just a couple of weeks ago, one, and I forget the exact, these are the sort of standard army type trucks, you might say, of World War II. One type was approximately 50,000 trucks that during the Lend-Lease, during World War II, America, one of these two types of trucks, America got to the Russians, to the Soviets, of just one of these two types, 50,000. And the other type, 150,000 trucks. Got those numbers right? 200,000 trucks are delivered to the Soviet Union during World War II from Dodge and General Motors, because of the GMC truck. 200,000 trucks are delivered to the Soviet Union. You probably thought the 50,000 was going to be big. No, we're not. We've not invaded Norway at all, or Denmark. We're going. We already talked about it earlier, so I won't go into details on that. But no. So that just to give you the scale. Now, maybe a lot of these trucks also came loaded with supplies and driving north, but they didn't come back and go south. These were donated or Lend-Lease, however you want to sold. 200,000 trucks. Now, can you imagine how much more difficult any of these Soviet offensives if you take away 200 trucks, or 200,000 trucks, not 200 trucks, 200,000 trucks? This has always been my contention that if you were fighting, you sort of fighting just Germany versus the Soviet Union, but no Italy, no Western allies, just Germany versus Soviet Union. In my estimation, Germany wins. I mean, you could do enough stupid moves. Hitler might be stupid enough and somehow do stupid enough moves that Germany loses. But it would have to be a nearly intentional act, in my opinion. And although those trucks are going to motorize Soviet divisions, they're also going to non-motorized, to just simply move stuff by truck around the Soviet Union, move it from the railway to the factory, or from the factory to the railway, just move around. Now the Gaz trucks, I don't know their numbers, GAZ, those were a major production. There very well may have been 200,000, there may have been more than that Gaz trucks made during World War II by the Soviets. But just eliminating, and these are just two models, and I think the two biggest in number that were given to the Soviet Union by America. They also got some Bedford trucks, I believe, from Britain, and in the hundreds, if not thousands, of those. So the scale of aid is coming, and a huge amounts of it is coming through Iran. And like I say, it is a military invasion. It is a war of aggression, because Iran was not actively helping out the Axis in any material, meaningful way. It was simply to allow the transport of, from the British side, transport of goods. From the Russians, there was a bit of, political infiltration going on as well while they were doing that. Let's see what, okay, from Beam Slam. Okay, the Geneva Conventions, attacking persons who are recognized as hors de combat is prohibited. A person is hors de combat, which is basically dehorsed, or something. I think it goes back to I don't know if that's quite right, but basically unable to fight. Anyone who is in the power of an adverse party, anyone who is defenseless because of unconsciousness, shipwreck, wounded, sickness, anyone who has clearly expressed the intention to surrender provided he or she abstains from any hostile act and does not attempt to escape. That's not my understanding of the situation. I'm not saying you're lying to me, Beamslam, not in any way, but you do not have to accept surrender. They're the U.S. Army. Um, anyone in the power of the adversary. Yeah, is that they fought for nothing? I'm not sure exactly who you're saying, but yeah. The Trans-Iranian Railway had some of the first mainline diesel locomotives in places due to the lack of water for steam. Okay, I did not know that. IKB works, as we mentioned before, or as you talked about, works in the railway, and he is something of a historical, both commercial as well as military historical expert. Might be going a little far in that he doesn't write books, but he's got a bunch of them and read a lot of the books on, and very knowledgeable. My sort of guru for information on railways and warfare and railways and history. And just again there, IKB and I have multiple series on this channel in which we play Railway Empire. The first game to do is a new game out, but Railway Empire. But we're both he is sort of guiding me away, and we're talking about railways and history and society and how they change society. We look at Britain, we look at Germany, and some others. I think that so we play together. I'm running the game, but we're both on Discord and chatting. So if you're interested in knowing about railways and mankind, because we cover a lot of the stuff, but focusing on how they influence things, check out those things. I don't know if you haven't already know, Admiral Teague has a really great channel that focuses on pop culture, but particularly, and that's where he takes his name from, on Star Trek, and he's trying to save Star Trek. So you can follow his link to, if you want to pop it in chat. I don't have it saved up right here. I should. Admiral Teague, if you're around, do post your link, and if we need to, I'll make sure I have that up if I need to approve the link or not. I don't know, but very good channel on that. Let me get this over here. Yeah. And well, you just copy. Yeah, yeah. And I understand the general meaning of hors de combat, and they're trying to define it. So I'm trying to remember some of my classes, and literally some, and I don't mean classes in school. I mean some other classes that I did take that did talk about warfare, and not just this documentary series. Now, again, those things that I took were in the late 80s, early 90s. I don't remember the exact year, but that sort of, so it's been a long time, and the class might, just lasted a few hours, but going on over some of the stuff. But my understanding is you do not need to accept somebody's surrender. Now, again, like you were saying, or it was saying, if you're unconscious or whatever, that's a different matter. But yeah, just as the war could have ended in 1938. Oh yes, the war could have been, or 1939. Yes, the war could have ended that time period. Okay, so I don't see for us right now a downside for getting Iran into our faction, so they will accept. So let's go for that. I know we did that. I'm not going to immediately ask them. Okay, they've accepted, so now we can see. Now, the problem with getting Iran now in this, with Hearts of Iron 4 more so than Hearts of Iron 3, and Hearts of Iron 3, if they join my faction, I could keep them potentially neutral, but neutral in my favor, because we can see here they have virtually no army. Now, my understanding with Iran in this time period in 41, they did not make their own bullets, let alone their own rifles, artillery pieces. So they were entirely dependent upon external manufacture for the modern means of warfare. So they could not, okay, so just mountain troop and some cavalry. So they could not. I was taught this stuff in the service and kind of remembered. Yeah, I don't understand beam slam, and also, and I was not in the service, and it was definitely not U.S. government teaching me. I don't want to specify more than that. These things. There are government policies about what to do. You know, what particular governments, whether it's Denmark or the USA, says to do about these people versus what understanding. And some of these, and I don't remember their names, I don't remember, but definitely back then you could look them up, and they, you know, had written books, and you know, some of the people that were talking, and had dealt with some criminal cases in laws of war, whether it was The Hague or whatever. So these were knowledgeable people, and I was just one person in the class kind of thing that I was able to sign up for and take, if you will. Again, it wasn't through the university system, it wasn't through the U.S. government, it's through some other things. But and again, this is why I did know some of these mercenary types. I, again, never got undone it, but I've had certain opportunities and got to know some of these people of this kind of stuff. And some of the, you know, some of the people that I, like one guy I knew, and it's well documented, and there's magazine articles on what happened. He was he was an American who was in the French Foreign Legion, and jumped as part of the French Foreign Legion into the Belgian Congo, or well, it wasn't Belgian Congo at the point, but it was in the Congo, Kilowazi or whatever, that jump to go rescue people and dealing with these we'll call them rebels for the moment, but they were butchering people and whatnot. And you know, he was part of the French Foreign Legion, and what, you know, at that time, and what he, not at the time I knew him, but at the time, coming in, doing that. And some of these people that I've talked to and dealing with, people that they weren't prepared to take prisoner, they, you know, whether the French Foreign Legion or some of these other types, and they weren't necessarily always surrendering, and they weren't taking surrenders, and it was very clear as to who these people were, meaning they were being, you know, they had weapons on them, and they were part of the other guys at the time. They weren't really looking to, you know, leave anybody left alive, shall we say, at the end of the engagement. And yeah. And I don't know of any of them that, you know, lined, you know, had them under their control and then, you know, tied their hands behind their back and then shot them or something. I don't know of any of them that did that. I don't know that happened either, at some of the particular things that I know of. But there was definitely not the idea of, oh, well, they're running away. Well, keep shooting because they'll be back. Oh, they've thrown their guns down. They're running away. Keep shooting. And that was the American policy. In the invasion of Iraq with the special forces, one of the in-bed reporters was horrified to watch, I think they were American Green Berets, gunning down Iraqi soldiers that had thrown away their guns and were running. They were just machine gunning them down, and they're running away. Yeah, because they weren't surrender. Now, these weren't trying to surrender. These were running away. again throwing their weapons away, and they may be hors de combat, in that they were no longer actively trying to be combatants. And they were maybe not near enough to want to surrender, meaning they were sort of, machine gunning from all-terrain vehicles. And the description that I read, and it's well described, so I'm not making this stuff up or what. I mean, this is well known. And so they, maybe not close enough to feel that they could surrender, and they were just running for their lives, and the Green Berets were just machine gunning them down. And the reporter was freaking out over this, going, they could be back tomorrow with another gun. These guys are just running away. We're going to kill all that we can now. And so they weren't under control in the sense that they hadn't been physically taken control of by the Green Berets, but in the sense that there was a big open field and they were running in the opposite direction, and the Green Berets sort of controlled the field. But they had never been properly processed, searched for like hidden weapons, and taken custody of. They had just, at some point, their will to fight had stopped, and they had jumped out of their trenches or other fighting behind the ditches or whatever, and run in the opposite direction without any weapons from the Americans, and the Americans continued shooting. And that was supposedly, and again the reporter asked around, it was supposedly well within the terms of engagement of the American forces. And my understanding within the, okay, and as you say, but you see, just again, and it may be literally coming down to milliseconds. The mere fact that somebody fires a Panzerfaust at a tank and the tank goes boom, and that guy immediately pops up and raises his hand, and maybe he is entirely unarmed and is going to be hors de combat, and you're looking at him with, either out your tank or an infantry guy next to the tank, and you go, do I trust that this guy is honestly surrendering, or is my life still in threat? Well, I don't care. I'm going to go with he's still a threat, so I'm going to shoot. So is that under custody, under control? Now, again, if we talk custody, I entirely agree with you. Now, how is that? The mere fact that you're pointing a gun at him and he is, shouting something that you believe sounds like trying to surrender or don't shoot, and he is, waving hands in the air, does that mean that you have proper custody and whatnot? And it may be a gray area and whatever that. Yeah, many gray area. Yeah, as you're saying. So there are rules written, and then there are the rules that are applied in practice. And I try to judge America on not just, hey, America's great or America's good and it's doing no wrong. No, I'll criticize America when I think they are, either policy-wise or an individual or whatever has done wrong, is doing wrong. We want to capture that. Okay. So here we are. We have a German division and a Romanian division. We're going to send both down into here because they are infantry divisions and they can push on that. Oh, what's your shape? Okay, you're exhausted right now. What are the Romanians looking like? They're looking good. So we're going to have one add in another flank to that attack there, and two to go push on that flank there. Hello, folk. How you doing? Thank you for all your support. It's just pathetic that reporters like that have more say over foreign policy and military strategy than professional soldiers. Absolutely, folk. And, I am not against the principle of embedding soldiers, or embedding reporters in with military operations. Hell, Ernie Pyle, who ends up dying in World War II, but a great reporter who does just that, embeds with various. Ooh, boy. Now, we were just 25 of the aircraft, but we were the most. Oh, no, there were some battleships and some. Okay, so So we were just the aircraft support for this, and we took out 3 heavy carriers, 3 heavy cruisers, 1 light cruiser, a destroyer of the British, and a French convoy. So that was very militarily significant, even though we may have played a small part. Inconclusive action there, and we lost a convoy. Now, why do we have a convoy down there? I don't godly know, but again, for some reason, we have air units down here that they're wanting to supply via sea instead of the freaking land and coming across here. So yeah, and so you need to maybe better vet your reporters as to okay, we're gonna, just because we haven't won that, we're gonna move one more German division that way, and the other German division is gonna go this way. You know, just who, and they don't necessarily all need to be like former military to be military reporters, but they need to be better briefed in understanding the laws of war, the necessary conduct of wars, of fighting. And yeah, you know, I am, you know, because I constantly, you know, have to put myself in a position of, I'm a paratrooper, or I'm a paratrooper lieutenant, and I have a platoon under my command, and I landed behind the lines in Normandy, and I'm not even talking about like a surprise assault into a fortification and just shooting everybody and not pausing even if they start to raise their hands. I'm like, oh hey, we're fighting and whatnot, and then all of a sudden, not terribly far off, but a little ways off, 20 guys pop out of the woods and go, we surrender. Now, maybe if they're Italians, we just sort of, leave your weapons, walk away, go to the rear, find somebody else, you know, because they're Italians and they're probably not going to fight. But if I'm not sure who they are and I presume they're Germans, you know, they're wearing German-like uniforms, because again, they're a little ways away, I can't quite see badges on them or some such thing. And I've got, you know, a platoon or a partial platoon, you know, 30 people or less, and I'm in enemy territory. I don't know that I'm going to accept their surrender. And again, these are, you know, they're looking down my muzzles of my guns, and they're not in my custody yet. And if I let them walk away, not only that they might come back and shoot, but maybe these guys want the war over and they don't really have any more stomach for fighting. They could even be, you know, what the Channel Island guys called them, pals of Adolf. That's sort of POH or whatever. POA, but it's the Russian collaborators that they used to, you know, military collaborators that you know, soldiers used to occupy Channel Islands. But there were others of these that are, you know, Russian nationals. There were some guy I know in the Netherlands who studies the World War II likes to tell the story of one of the last battles of World War II, sort of after World War II was sort of technically over, I think, in Europe. Germans fighting some Georgians, you know, from down here that had been German, you know, units, but they did not want to continue fighting or something, or very much in the last days. And so you know, so these Georgians wearing German uniforms, but fighting Germans up here because they were part of the garrison. So there's a bunch of garrison, you know, Eastern Europeans garrisoning here, and they just may, oh hey, good chance, Americans, we can surrender. We, you know, we hate communists, we may hate Russians, but you know, we don't hate Americans, and we have no wish to fight you. And maybe them, you know, just wanting to surrender. But I don't know this as a you know, who these guys are, as like a very small unit commander, sort of cut off. And these 20 guys, if I try to take them into possession, and I have a strong belief that there is Germans coming to, you know, retake the bridge that I'm guarding, or rail section that I'm guarding, or road area that I'm guarding. And if I let them go, just let them wander away, they may tell the Germans where I am, that I've set up an ambush, and I don't want them to know exactly where I am. I'm probably just going to say shoot, and shoot them down. Because, again, they're not yet in my custody. Yes, they've sort of appeared out of somewhere with their hands up, and they're, you know, within muzzle, you know, I can easily hit them with basic rifles and machine guns. They're not like super far away, but they're not super close either. Again, they're not in my custody, but they are sort of hors de combat, but they're, again, not really my custody. In the control sense, and that's, if you know, how do you determine control? Because They're looking down. I'm looking down. Do I control them because my guys have rifles pointed at them? Or do I control them that I have them tied up, you know, or in a you know, locked in a room or whatever? So I don't know. I would be, you know, again, in that sort of thing, I would be ordering to shoot just because I am responsible for my men and for my mission, and willing to spend the lives of my men for my mission, of, you know, blocking German reinforcements at a critical time. So yeah, maybe I'm wrong in my decisions. Maybe current army would like, oh God, Gamer can never be in command of U.S. troops. He is too bloodthirsty. If they were hearing this now, that might be the case. I don't know, but that is my estimation. Okay, so we got a German. All right, okay, division. Okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna send this division here. They're gonna attack there, and these guys are gonna support that attack. So now we have 2 attacking, but only 1 going to move out of position. That because we have this guy here, and these guys move into reinforce. You guys, how is your equipment levels? Mainly worrying about tanks. Yeah, they got some captured vehicles here on the Eastern Front, the T-26s. But otherwise, the 80 CS medium tanks, this is a well-equipped unit. Though it had retreated back, it's probably got hit by too much. So we're gonna push you forward there. You're coming up to here. Okay, so this attack on these mountain troops has stopped now that they are reinforced with the cavalry division. These guys are coming here. These guys are just taking their time moving. That's not doing too well. They're about ready to collapse. Okay. Well, I think we'll be okay even if they collapse because we got these guys. They're going to take back that city. Really sort of Novosibirsk or whatever there is actually where the port is. So I don't think they're going to get cut off even if they collapse. So we're going to keep pushing there. Okay, so we're going to push into there. These guys are... Well, how are they doing? Okay, they're... You know, no, we're going to stop that. They're going to support this attack. So I want this attack to succeed. Okay, so our Iraqi allies have collapsed. Iran is in the Axis, but not yet. Oh, they've joined the war. Okay, I didn't ask them to join the war, but I just sort of want them as a friendly ally, I guess. Whatever. So, yeah, whatever. Do your thing. You can convince, if you can convince your soldiers it's right, either your superiors have no objection or don't get to know it's your call. Yeah, but no, yeah, but also do notice, you know, I am positing a situation in which I am out of, not just out of communication in the sense I can't talk to higher level command, but out of communication in the sense that I don't have support from anybody else, meaning resupply, reinforcements, artillery support, air support, what, you know, whatever it may be, we don't have, and that's what I'm positing as conditions for this, as being a how I would handle that situation. That is different than if I can readily take them as prisoners. If I can readily take them as prisoners, I would take them as prisoners. That's, whether it's at that point a legal or a moral call on my part, I'm not absolutely sure, but I would be taking them as prisoners if that was a generally Okay, so this pocket has collapsed. That's why we have these large groups here. Right, okay, let's take a look. Okay, so we've just now pushed them out of here. They had been there. I think we're going to go up that way because these guys are going to go here. These guys are going to go... Let's actually put them on trains. We can get them... Oh, well, no, let's take them down to here. We can use some more support down here. And... you guys keep going. So now with Kharkov in our hands, we can sort of see here that the clock is still ticking here. We have three days remaining to get that rail line functioning. Here we are supplying 47 units worth of supply for 40 capable, so we're stressing it out. But down here for other units, it's supplying 36. Down here they're not yet supplying because we haven't. Again, it had more days to get that rail line in functioning. Yeah, I know you're not a lawyer. Yeah, I know what you meant there. I got the context. Yeah. And so, yeah, and it's that kind of thing for me. And I don't think I'm particularly bloodthirsty or particularly, you know, anything like those natures or whatnot. But that's just how... Because I've not been in the Army, but I have gone through the Army ROTC in college, up to a level, doing that. So I have had the training of some of that. Again, it's not fully and complete in all training. No, I'm not, and it's not just the same if you're in the Army now or we're in the Army as being the same as that. No, but I have had some experience, so I sort of kind of know what I'm talking about. Notice I said sort of, not actually know what I'm talking about. Okay, so here we are. We've taken here. Now, we want to get across this river. I could push here, and that wouldn't be a bad idea, because we can push this province from here and here. But I want to sort of go now. So I'm going to push here, because I can push from here. I wish I could plan it out better to have these like you can in 3. But once that starts, I'm going to support this attack from here. I'm going to, let's see, how are you? What shape? You're in good shape. I'm actually going to start sending you across the river, and the Romanians are good shape. I'm going to use you as supporting fire. So that way they're being pushed there. Now these guys are not entrenched, so they're moving along because they're moving along there. We're going to attack here, and I think with both of these divisions, attack this mountain division here. Now these guys are going to also attack there. I know this leaves the front open, but what we're going to do here is we do have these guys coming up this way, which will sort of block there, and both of these divisions are in good shape, both equipment-wise and organization supply-wise. They're going to attack here, which will hold this flank open, and these guys are going to support that attack, so we're not leaving this open if we do succeed here. But that's mostly okay. That's turned green, so that's good. So you can sort of see this is how I like to play the game. I know there's a lot of people that like to play with the you know, planning and then just let the AI battle it all out. That is not wrong. It's just a different desire and play style, in my opinion. I like to sort of plan these out. Yes, reserve. Yes, ROTC. Yes, Reserve Officer Training Course. Yes, I was in 3 years of Naval Junior ROTC in high school, and I was 2 years in ROTC, Army ROTC. You just sort of understood as Army if you're not specifying Naval. But, you know, Reserve Officer Training Corps in, you know, in university. So that's, just, again, just give my bona fides and levels of training and whatnot. So between honestly, well, I could go into, there's some more detail there. But basically, the Naval Junior ROTC program is sort of a recruiting program for basic sailors, in essence. Most of the graduates from that end up going into the Navy end up just going in as enlisted Navy personnel, because there was one sort of special class that I briefly had one, because they just generically you go in. There were two teachers. One was for Naval Junior ROTC. One was a really nice, really liked the guy. He was a small boat captain, if you will. I mean, it's not like he was a petty officer, but a small boat captain, I think down in the Mekong, but definitely in the riverine forces in Vietnam, and saw considerable combat in doing that during the Vietnam War. And I don't know if he was specifically hired by, because it is sort of a, because these are all at that point, these guys, although they wear the uniform, they're basically inactive reserve officers. So they come to school wearing the Navy uniform, and they're inactive reserve. They're not active duty, but they are in uniform. And during he was there through the 3 years of high school that I went through, but I only had him for about half of a semester as my teacher, because I just sort of generically put it into their into the classes. But what they would do is, the guy in charge of it was a World War II vet who commanded a squadron of PT boats in World War II. Now, so I don't know if he picked the other guy because he was also, a small boat guy who had served on one of the battleships. I forget which one, during the Vietnam War. I don't know if it was the Missouri or the New Jersey or whatever, but he had also served on a battleship during the Vietnam War, bombarding the coast and whatnot. But his main combat experience was small boat. But he commanded a PT squadron in the Pacific. One of his subordinates was JFK. So he commanded, the future president, PT 109. So he saw a good portion of the war as a PT boat squadron commander in the Pacific through there, and learned a lot from him. And what he did is they went with the other teacher and actually moved students around to get the better, more intellectually developed into the captain. And he was an actual naval captain as rank, not just a captain. You call them, even if they're an the Army, what the Army would call an NCO, or the Navy a petty officer, you still call him captain of the boat, if they're a captain of the boat. But he was actually rank of captain, which would equivalent in the Army as a colonel. And I had him as for 2 years as my specific classroom teacher, and he was very advanced in his teaching and pushing his pupils, and his classroom was half the size as the other teacher's classroom once they got done shuffling the people, because he was again trying for a more advanced and more elite training. Now, unfortunately, he retired. So my third year in high school was with a really nice guy. He a commander. He served in as part of the base command structure. I don't know exactly what, not in command of it, but part of the command base structure way back at the time for Cam Ranh Bay during Vietnam. So he was another, but not really so much, in my understanding, and by his personality, I wouldn't take it as being a combat officer. Not that he wouldn't do his duty, but the small boat guy was serious. I could tell. He shot at people with M16s or whatever, onshore and offshore. And the other guy definitely shot at a lot of people in World War II from PT boats. So the other guys were much more combat, where he was more, rear area. But still, it's in the Vietnam War, so there's still guerrilla actions, and there were definitely attacks at Cam Ranh Bay while he was there as part of the garrison there. So he was also that. Yes, there is several famous movies. They were expendable, which is earlier than the early stages of the war, is the best one. I would go for the PT boats. And then there is, I think, I forget the name. Robert Montgomery, I believe. Is that who I think plays Kennedy in in the movie about PT-109. But yeah, if you want to check those out, those are good. Okay, so we've gotten 2 here. We're going to push 1 up here. We're risking a bit, guys. We're going to put Liebstande Adolf Hitler that way, because I think these guys are going to defend okay, hopefully. We also have all of these guys here moving north up along the flanks. That's why I'm not so worried about if I leave a slight gap somewhere in here and they somehow... Okay, so these guys are falling back here. Let's push both of them this way, I think, because we got enough support there. And here, those that aren't moving, they can also support this attack here. So just give you some of my background in training. Again, I don't want to say it's as good or as much as someone who was actually in, but I do have some understanding of what I'm talking about. Though I definitely call myself an armchair general, in that I've not commanded at all a general level or any other officer level of command. And there's a lot of real world not just dealing with people, but dealing with situations in the real world that are not wargaming. I think I'm good at war games. I think I'm very good at war games, though of course I've only played a few people. There's many more people out there that I've not played that maybe I get my butt handed to me. But I think I'm a good war gamer. Okay, these guys are falling back here, and we can just maybe cross that river. These guys are pushing here. They're coming up here and falling back. Got these guys coming up. Okay, well, we've got... Okay, you come across here. Right, okay. This division attack there. Start that attack. I also think I'm a pretty good analysis of, analyzing situations around the world and putting pieces together. So just to talk myself up, as it were, but I sort of guess I need to do that since I'm a YouTuber. We have to be all full of ourselves enough. I think the RN would call the officer in command of a vessel who is not the rank of a captain would be referred to as post-captain, but is posted as a captain at least during the Age of Sail. Yes, there is a whole to get a person commanding a vessel, because I've read a bunch of naval fiction in the RN era and the Age of Sail. If it was below the rates, which I believe is 50 gun, if it's less than 50 gun ship, if it's a below the rates, they would be technically called master and commander of the vessel. Though they would be referred to as, captain while on board their ship by their crew. And they would identify themselves to another RN officer who didn't know, I'm the captain of that sloop, which is definitely would be known, or that corvette or whatever, that would be known as something below the rate of ship, so that they would know. And of course there was, it was on, I forget which shoulder it was. It's either the left or the right shoulder. You would have an epaulette thing, that was gold or looked gold. It was often brass. Metallic thing on your shoulder. On one side, it would be for master and commander, and you would move it to the other side for a post captain. 2 would be either, I think, maybe commodore, but definitely admiral. Having them on both shoulders would define that. And so once you've been made post of a ship of the line, or no, 50. I think it would be a frigate or above. So what would that be? That would be like 32 guns or something. Yeah, of the rate, if you're, you need of a frigate captain or above, it would be a post captain. So if you were a sloop, or a I'm somebody that's actually giving command, not just who's the guy who's in charge of the rowing boat for the few hours, but actually giving command of a crew. But it was below the rate, so below the rate of a frigate. You would be technically a master and commander, but they would call you, courtesy wise, call you a captain, and you would be a captain of that particular vessel. So yes, but post captain. So that is sort of, and the ranks structures are. Oh, we took out, for the loss of one submarine, we took out 6 convoys or transport ships, however you want to call that. There. May be a worthwhile, and there we no loss, but we took out 4 there. So yeah, so I've been able to know again, like World War, having as my teacher for 5 days a week, one hour a day. World War II vet who told us war stories, but also trained us. So I was in classroom, out of classroom, some overnight field trip type things, getting us training and whatnot. So I did a lot of that kind of stuff, and so I've known some very interesting people in my life. So World War II vets are not some vague thing that I know. My friend Eric, who for a while was doing some commissions when he had time. He's Norwegian, lives in Norway, but was interviewing World War II vets, mostly just phone call kind of things, trying to get that had agreed to signed in and had agreed to be interviewed for some historical projects. But otherwise, he's mostly never met a World War II vet. Where, like I say, I've had long and close associations, including family members that are World War II vets. So, and talking about that stuff. So for me, World War II, it's not my living memory, but is very much in the living memories of people that I know. Okay, so these guys are moving into unopposed here. These guys are crossing the river. That'll take them a while to cross the river. These guys are crossing the river and pushing up that way, but that'll put us 2 divisions there. 1 division will be here. We are sort of pushing, I guess. And I love that they've finally done this. I mean, I know it's the last major update, but it's been a while out. But where before this pushing in wouldn't matter so much, but now if we push up and take this railway, it now radically reduces the amount of supply. Because the amount of supply moved on that versus this, so supplying all of Leningrad is just so much better. We're going to push north, and so this, yes, we are pushing towards Moscow, and there's good reason too. And I definitely, playing a lot of these games, I sort of like to. I sort of have the habit, I should say, of going with the flow and sort of forgetting the big picture. Looking for the opportunity where to push on them, and maybe losing the big picture here. But if we can secure Leningrad, or whether the Finns, which are not our allies, but I guess co-belligerents would be the proper term, and we could have the line here, and we don't have to have garrison back that way. A lot of these units here, the lines will shorten, and that we can then push either up this way or down this way in future. So cutting these railroads are very useful. What is Frog Eye saying? Is it possible when you look at naval battles to hit the button on the lower so we can see the details of the battle? Okay, maybe, let's see, next time do we have one? I'll do that. Oh, well, maybe we could do that here. Okay, you're talking here, I guess. Okay, so damaged enemy transport ships damaged here. Oh, no, yeah, okay. Yeah, damaged, killing blow, 1 damaged and got away by the 2 different subs, and one of our subs was damaged. Okay. Oh, and I was also recently asked. Okay, what is it here? Current wars, German-Soviet war. Yeah, this is what they wanted to see. Wanted to see our casualty rates. That was one thing. So we have lost 250,000. between, you know, divisions. This is, I don't know if that's dead or captured or wounded or whatever, Okay, the Soviets have lost 2 million. So we're doing about 10 to 1 casualty rates to the Soviets in this war. And also I was asked, how did I have so much? Because we have almost if we continue at this usage with this amount of fuel, it will take a year to use up our fuel. And once in a while we go to positive, and he's having trouble with his fuel. And let's see here. Okay, and I wanted to do this and just hover over this for a moment so he can, if he checks this out, can pause so we can see here. And he was wondering why I had so much, and whether, I think he has more motorized units than I do. And so was it just that I was using less, or somehow I have greater production of fuel? I don't know, and I'm just, hopefully he can then compare whatever this is, our, you know, current daily gain versus our usage there. Now we just have a free military factory here. Let's look at this, which will show us our, okay, we are down on heavy artillery by 48 guns, but garrison equipment, which I'm not really worried about. I know we're way down negative. This I'm more worried about. Radios, support equipment, tanks, close air support aircraft, we're doing badly on. We're barely keeping up on fighter aircraft. So now let's look over here at production here. Okay, we can increase our fighter aircraft. We have the factories to do so. We can do another line, or I can jump to 5 per line, per box. But we are down on rubber, so that is hurting whatever the rubber usage is down at the bottom of this list. And you can shift it, like these guys we're doing 1.4 a week because we don't have any rubber for them and they need rubber. And same here. Well, 2 a month approximately. So what we can do here now is let's come over to trade, click on rubber. Okay, the reason we're not having the rubber right now is we're not able to get it from the Siamese Empire. So let's click on this. Let's go to 0 on that. Send that. Okay. So because is producing rubber, but not possible to trade with them, or a possible route. Now that is probably because I've done this. So let's remove that. Let's go down to that. Avoid. Let's never. Okay, so now I think I did that to myself. So let's go Siamese Empire. Okay, well, not route. Trade route cannot be found. Well, let's trade with Japan, I guess. We'll try that. We'll see if we can do that there. So that will hopefully get us, okay, so now we're doing a bit better there with transports, a bit better there with that now that we have rubber coming in. Okay, what I think we'll do is, since it's using aluminum, we have a lot of aluminum coming in from places like Hungary or whatever, so we'll increase the amount of radio production because we're keeping up with the tanks for the size of our tank forces. Okay, yeah, no problem, Frog Eyes. I'm happy to show whatever. I don't pay attention. I just never really have to a lot of those statistical elements of the game. I just want to see the results kind of thing, maybe much, whether that or like the other, like casualty numbers or some things, but I'm happy to show them off for people if that is their interest. I try to do whether both live. Oh, these guys. Okay, these guys have. Well, it looks like the Soviets were pushing in here. They've won, but if I'm judging this right, they're heading in different directions. I like the old counter system better. the old one was a square counter, yes, but as a unit was moving, it would point up one of the four corners as to determine, or whatever, determine which direction it was going. Where here I have to look up at the model, and it looks like these guys are going to occupy here and going up to there now that they've defeated this unit instead of occupying there. But these guys are walking into there and coming out, so it looks like we'll be okay. I think we will head to Mycop again while they're trying to cross the river, because these guys will come in here and get resupplied and reorganized and hold open the path for me, just like that. And they'll have the path through here, and we'll be getting some more soldiers. And now that we're down to one division there and it's moving, we're going to attack, which will pin them in place, and we will support the attack from there, which will maybe do better. There we go. Let's take a look at the air situation. Again, I would recommend, if you want to play like I do, you know, manually micromanage everything, which I like, I would play it slower than I'm playing now. But it's a combination of wanting to keep the, you know, the action going, and also just busy talking with you guys. Okay. So I'd play it slower. So we're going to move these guys up to this airbase that can support. I hope we have enough supply that can support these aircraft, which is also an issue. And we're going to put them up over here. Yeah, like that. And this unit here, because they're only here, again, I think we can supply them. So these guys are going to come here and also come over there. And we can see when we click here the area of operations, and the greater they cover a particular air region, the more effective they are. Now let's take a look here. So okay, we have here, okay, all of this we have all the way up to there. They can hold 100 airplanes, and we can look at supply. Okay, so here these aircraft would get supply from here. We're supplying 30 units out of this, however they're calculating it. Well, actually, you can see supply hub 31.16 or whatever, and it's capable of doing 40, so we can come here. So that won't be stressing the supply out. And you need to keep that in mind. So if you were, say, here and having terrible supply, but having good supply back here and have an airbase that would work, and as opposed to an airbase up here, you would bet better to keep it here, just as a general principle. And you can automate these things again, but I prefer to. Okay, let's again look. Okay, we're gonna move these guys, maybe these guys up to, at least some of them up to here. Yeah, yes, keep them over there. And see on the ground. Okay, so okay, we have this airbase here. Okay, these guys can handle a lot more. So let's move them to here and up over here. These guys as well, they have longer range, the 110s, and we'll also put them up over here. Okay, let's look. Okay, so this is well within our air coverage area here. So, now let's move both over here, and one squadron up over here. Once you get here, the other squadron, let's see if we put it over there. Supply out. Get better coverage. Okay, so they're all moving up to Krakow. And I'll have orders to do that better. It's funny, I got away and went back and only passed 3 days in game. I know, and some people are complaining, and justifiably so, that the clock isn't moving so much. Some of that is definitely me talking. Some of that is just me micromanaging the game. So, okay, so what we're going to do here is, okay, these guys here are well organized, so they're going to join that attack. I think just to open up a new flank here, we're going to, so coming from more provinces, which helps you out, and these guys are going to just start moving and occupying up there, keeping the front moving forward. So even if I wasn't talking so much to these guys, oh, we have been embargoed by Finland. I don't know why Finland doesn't like us. Okay, these guys are going there. So these guys are going to cross this river here. These guys are also going to cross that river unopposed there. These guys are moving into the city. This is the Moscow thrust. Okay, well, this is just a motorized regiment. So it's going to attack here into an infantry division, but it's a very good motorized regiment. Let the clock start. Okay, and we're then going to support it from 2 flanks. So although it will be just 1 regiment going in to occupy that, we will be pushing on from there and going deeper into it. And I don't know, you know, I'm sure it would vary from person to person, but would really me just playing and describing what I'm doing, I'm not just saying, like, be silent, but would that really be as, I definitely get the idea that maybe play a bit more, for sure. I'm not saying I shouldn't, and whatnot, then but would just playing without the history chatter, would that be as popular? I don't know. You guys can chime up, but maybe I'm taking a sample of people that, you know, are the ones that are here, so they love the history chatter. Okay, 1 squadron is going to come down and sort of like what I mentioned down to there, and come up over Fubon, and not be deployed too far forward, and stay up over Ukraine here, but just to get a little more further forward. So I definitely get the idea of watching to see what the outcome is, if you will. Let's also push here, since they're not fortified, and maybe dug in a bit, but so I don't know. And even those later on YouTube, you know, watching this when it's released, I do want your feedback, because there's no point in me making a show that nobody wants to watch. Okay, you 2 divisions go that way. You guys continue to move. We're going through swamps here, so they're going slow. We're moving some over to the forest to sort of push up, which aren't going to go terribly fast there either, but a bit faster, but able to push here. So I always like feedback. I don't care if you tell me I suck. I just want, if you do, fine. Just tell me why you think I suck, and whether I'm going to improve or change or something, I don't know. We found some unit there. I don't know how he was there. I don't know if he landed. Okay, these guys are now going to support the attack there. Maybe check your discussions. You might be able to upgrade, or check your decisions. Oh, yes. Okay. Part of my worry with some of these... Oh, pause. I thought it was paused. We no longer get the effects of Eastern Front Initiative. Uh-oh. Yeah, that'd be not good. Is that this unit... Where is this unit going to pop up? Meaning if I refit the 8th Panzer that's somewhere, is this going to pop up back in Germany? And then I've got to bring it all the way to the front. That's with all, because these are all current units that I would pull out of the front line, and I don't know whether it's worth pulling out of the front line to do so. Now, the SS divisions, that's a different issue. Here, I think. No, it's one of the, it's another clever little, they do a lot of, oh, it's, is it up here? No, where is it? No, where is, oh man. I know it's around here somewhere. I know I've used it. No. Thought it was decisions, but I'm not seeing it. Officer Corps units. Here we are. This is it. I found it. Okay, this would pull the Leibstandarte off. This would pull the Polizei off the front. Expanding the 12th SS Ritter. Okay, this would pull the SS Ritter off. Right, map. Now, where is the SS Ritter? Where is it? Is it on the front lines or is it? Thank you, IKB. Yeah, I did find it. But yeah, I was looking. Oh, I think it's, is this it? No, these are other sort of garrison units. I could move this forward, but it's just a few brigades. It isn't like a proper division. This, I think, is just a headquarters staff, yes. And this is the Watch Battalion of Leibstandarte, which is, again, it's sort of headquarters and garrison staff. This is sort of a training outfit plus, you know, honor guards and actual security for Hitler kind of thing is what these guys are doing. And there is definite rotation between these, you know, units and from the front line. So this is what's sitting back in headquarters. So that, again, that's really sort of a nothing. This parachute unit here, the 7th Flieger Division, I could use it, but again, it's not much of a unit. You could put it on the front line. Sure, it's probably a, you know, good fighting unit, but it's not much of a unit, and I really have not had a good airborne need for it. The Ritter SS is maybe over. Did I use it as internal security? I'm not sure. Oh, here it is. Oh yeah, Totenkopfstandard. Okay, these are SS cavalry unit. All right. Well. Okay, recruit and deploy. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll expand this. I think there will be a pop-up here in a moment. You guys, we're going to put you on trains and get you, I think I need more this way here. Okay, so they're doing it fair at best. Launch operation. Ah, yes, Eagle. Operation The Eagle has landed. Yes, great movie. Michael Caine. What is it? Plays Kurt Steiner. Okay, so you guys. Okay, we're going to let you organize up while you guys are moving into that position. These guys are coming in right behind, so we're coming up there. Okay, so these guys succeeded in pushing into this province. This is another area that I need more units at. You know, okay. These guys stop this. I need more divisions up here. Via train, yes. We have somebody here. Okay, you're almost across the river. Okay, you guys aren't nearly across the river. Okay, we're gonna put you on trains and get you up here. Because right now it's my flanks that I'm worried about. And it's one thing to go, don't worry about your flanks, push to the coast, Rommel or whoever here. Yeah, with the infantry following along. This is a much shorter battlefront than what we're talking out here. You know, if we look at scale of operations. Okay, so they've come up here. They're being counterattacked. They're doing okay. Again, this is just a motorized regiment here. You know, it's not a full division. It's not a panzer division yet. I don't think they have any tanks. We can look and see. No, oh, they got some stugs. So they got stugs. So some armor and a support capacity. We'll see if they hold, but they'll fall back to one of the two positions if they don't hold. But they've got a river to fight on. Oh, good. Okay, so now we've got some Romanians up here that will push into there, and we'll also send in the Bulgarians. Turn that from a maybe not doing so well into doing... Okay, so now I think we're going to get the city there, so we're going to move here to sort of push along there, hold the front line. Okay, guys, you move up to there. Yes, you to there. You support that attack. Okay, so we moved into here. That is good. Now, let's attack into there. You support, and you support. That should be well supported. Now that we pushed here, let's send all of these guys here. Instead of supporting this attack, we're going to push in along this railway here. And yeah, I know I'm sort of like earlier on giving up an opportunity possibly for a big pocketing, which is good. Or trying to just push. Okay, so they are doing okay-ish there, so but they will support them. Keep everybody moving up. I think you're going to just walk along there. And it looks like we have some more naval battles that we can check out. And yes, okay, so we have the history here. We lost 3 ships. Now, take a naval look at things. I would be more willing to put up with the loss of these ships. Maybe, okay, well, okay, well, here, this. supply transfer. We're looking at ocean depth. Okay. Well, maybe I can turn this off again with still trade with Japan. Yes. Okay. Well, are we still trading effectively with Japan? No. Why aren't we trading with Japan? Okay, now we just have a naval route inefficiency of only 90%. So, and we have that. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't. Well, I think we're going to end this episode here. I want to thank you all for watching. I do appreciate it very much. No, this, that, and that. And see you next time for more, yes, more Hearts of Iron. And I think we're also going to end the live stream. I really do appreciate hanging out with you, Beam Slam, Frog Eyes, IKB, Admiral T, Kronos. Who else is still around here? Folk is probably still here. Sebastian may or may not be here, but thank you for hanging out with me. I do appreciate it, everybody. And I don't know if Arno's still around. Thank you for all your help. So, yes, I will be back, I do believe, tomorrow. We will be playing War Thunder is the current plan. You can join us. It's a free-to-play game if you want to. We'll make room for you at least for a mission or two. It can be just starting out. We take newbies. Or you can just hang out with us. Either way, tomorrow's a bit more of, guys hanging out and playing games. Do that. And then Sunday, no, not Sunday, sorry, Sunday, it's tomorrow. Tuesday, I'm going to be live streaming for Slytherin on Slytherin's channel on Twitch. And I think they're also going to be doing stuff on their YouTube channel. They're doing Home of the War Gamers. They're going to be announcing a bunch of stuff, games coming out, that kind of thing, DLCs and whatnot. I know some of them, and one of the reasons I know one of them is I will be streaming immediately, as part of the Home of the War Gamers, but sort of past just after the, Slytherin, publishers, their stream from their office ends. I will be immediately starting at that, streaming a unannounced game. I know what it is, obviously, but I'm letting them announce it, obviously. So I'll be streaming that for a couple hours, and then after me, there'll be another streamer playing another game that I don't know if it, I think it's a DLC that may or may not have been announced until that point. Tuesday, if you want to join me on Twitch, a whole bunch of stuff there you can check out there for Slytherin TV. So we're not putting up exactly what I'm playing, but I will go this far, and I'm sure it's not going to give anything away. It could be all kinds of things. It is a historical game, and yes, it is set something with World War II. That's as far as I go. I don't think they'd be mad at me, even if you somehow guessed right at that point, because they're working on a bunch of different things. But so I will be streaming that for them Tuesday for a couple hours. So yeah, I'll be doing that, and of course we'll be back next weekend. So Beam Slam, yeah, I hope to see you Tuesday. Yeah, you'd probably be interested in the thing. So in the game. And it is a game, not just a DLC that I'm doing. So, yeah, see you guys one of those times.